My former friends tried to trick me into letting them move in with me, as they used my organization I work for as an excuse to get me over to their house and give a donation, which has honestly been a surprising development because this really has made me feel very uneasy. And now that they started to trash my name and send me awful text messages saying that I'm selfish for not letting them move in with me, I'm at a loss for words and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Welcome back to Am I the Jerk? This first story is weird, and it really is as strange as you think. These people essentially tried to trick the original poster and almost force their way into this guy's house and move in with him. It's incredibly bizarre, but it's also very cathartic, so definitely strap in for this one. But also, please subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already, click the bell to turn on notifications, and with that, let's get started. Okay, so you know how as adults we had less and less time for each other? You end up with social media friends who were more like acquaintances from your past, and they quickly become people that you talk to maybe once in a million years. Well, the other night, one of my old acquaintances reached out. They wanted to donate supplies to the organization that I volunteered with and was heavily involved in. And naturally, being a helpful person, I said, "Oh, absolutely, thank you." I told them where to donate and what our hours were. Well, the next thing they told me was that they didn't have a car, so I would need to come and get them. For reference, they lived all the way across town from me, which is about a good half-hour drive. So this was no short trip, but it turned out I was going out that way anyways, because at that time, I had some family that I needed to take care of. So I said to them, "Sure, how about I do a porch pickup so that way I can go about my day and I can get the donation?" And honestly, I thought this would be easy peasy, right? Well, no, of course it's not going to be easy. They insisted that I come over and meet them face to face, which I thought was weird because I never once offered to do that. I mean, come on, I was a brutally overworked person with a family who just completely depended on me, as well as someone who worked 65 hours a week. And so I gently and politely explained that to the acquaintance over and over again. But no, they just kept getting pushier and pushier, completely ignoring what I was saying and really demanding a meetup in person. And then all of a sudden, they mentioned their living situation just completely out of the blue, and I really thought this was weird. Why were they talking to me about them moving the next month? But anyway, since they couldn't respect my boundary, I put my phone down and I went about my day. I don't have time to argue with someone. There are literally errands to do and people to take care of. I texted the acquaintance back about 8 hours later saying, "Hey, I can come pick up the supplies, but I really can't come in and socialize. I have a crabby little one with me who really needs to be put to bed." Which wasn't a lie, that was all completely true. Well, the acquaintance was suddenly infuriated with me. They said to me, "Fine, we'll dump the supplies out in front of our building." Then they told me that they had made plans to go out and hang out at a bar, and that they were disappointed in me for not joining them. And it's okay, where did that come from? I don't even drink. Well, anyways, I picked up the supplies in the dark, and we're talking completely pitch blackout, and I had no idea where I was going because it was an unfamiliar neighborhood. But I mean, whatever. I found what I was looking for, I picked it up, and I headed home. I mean, I was ready to go to bed after a long day of being an adult with lots of responsibilities. But then I got a text later that night, and I really thought the acquaintance was drunk. Because it was here they were shaming me because I didn't want to meet up. Because obviously, I think they had an ulterior motive in mind. And it's here that I find out the truth. They wanted me to meet up with them so badly because they were going to ask if they could move into my place. Now, I just bought a home by myself about 2 years prior, so I had a stable place to live right then. Meanwhile, these acquaintances had been financially unstable and had to move every 6 months up to a year. And it's not that I pried into their lives, they usually just blasted it all over social media. So I was roughly aware of what was going on. I was then sitting at home getting all these half-sensical drunken text messages with them going on and on about how I should be ashamed of myself for not hanging out with them. They talked about how they had nowhere to go next month. They couldn't afford the rent where they were planning to go, and they needed a place to stay. They talked about how they were low on funding and putting everything on credit cards. And I'm pretty sure they were hoping to guilt trip me into taking them in. But if I'm being honest, I had a feeling something was off when they kept insisting that I come over to their house. It gave me the same kind of chilling vibe that a man offering me candy to get in his truck would give off. You know what I mean? It's kind of that creepy feeling. But never in a million years did I ever expect a request like that. They're basically saying, "Hey buddy, I'm gonna make my financial and living situation your responsibility despite being a grown adult." Well, after it was all said and done, I didn't say a single word back to them. And you know what? I didn't plan on it. I thought silence was the best thing I could do right then. Perhaps they would wake up, see their disgusting text messages to me, and maybe, just maybe, reflect on their actions. But then again, they seemed like they were just completely entitled. Maybe they wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. And truly, I did not care. I didn't feel guilty for 1 second for not wanting to go up and visit them. I was actually really proud of myself for trusting my gut instinct and realizing that something was off about it. Despite all of my driving and gas and effort to find find the supplies for the organization that I volunteered with. I did not even get a single thank you from these people. Instead, I was sitting there getting those drunken, insulting text messages. Apparently, I was such a bad person, and that's putting it nicely. I mean, they were definitely not wording it like that, all for not wanting to take in people I barely knew. Like, I could see why their housing situation never lasted that long. Because, bro, who would want to take people in like that? I bet they would be an absolute nightmare of a roommate. Also, why did they think it would be my responsibility to make sure they were taken care of? It seemed to me there were like quite a bit of an assumptions going on there, but little did they know I bought a small place. It isn't even like big enough for me. Like, truly, it's a tiny house. There was no way we were fitting multiple people in there, not to mention all of the additional pets this acquaintance had. Like, just imagine all of us in there combined with 2 extra cats. Like, that's definitely going to be against some kind of fire code. So even if I wanted to help them out, I wouldn't be able to. So right now, I'm truly just trying to like process what's going on, and writing for me is a good way to like get it all out of my head, so I wouldn't get mad trying to like process this really unusual social situation. But that day was just another reason for me to feel like the world only sees me as a tool or a resource. I'm just here to pour from an empty cup and give and give and give some more. My feelings don't matter. People only see what they can take from me. I will forever be an outsider looking into a world that I never belonged in the first place. So seriously, please don't argue with me on that. I lived that reality for more than 30 years. I'm an adult with high-functioning autism. It is unfortunate, but what are you gonna do about it? I can't force the world to think of me as a person. Like, the world is going to be as cold and brutal to me as it wants to be. And people like these acquaintances are just one of the many reasons why I feel that way. Okay, first off, I really understand some of the points that the original poster is making, where they're like, oh man, I feel used. People only see me as a resource. They're just gonna take advantage of me, etc. Like, I don't have autism. I don't know what that experience is like, so I can't really comment on it. But I will confidently say I have felt used many times in the past, where people just use me for my situation or my resources, or like for my networks or something like that. Just really like snake behavior or like slimy behavior, where someone's only looking for what you can do for them, knowing full and well that if you ever ask for anything in return, you're never gonna get it. Which is obnoxious. It's so unfair, dude. I'm just trying to get by in life just like everybody else. So if I was in the original poster shoes and like friends I haven't talked to in years came up to me and was like, oh, we need to move in with you. We're really desperate, and if you don't let us do this, then you're a bad person. Like, what are you talking about, dude? You've got one foot out the door to becoming homeless. How is that my fault, dude? I've just got this tiny house that I live in. Like, get a grip. And also, get a job. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I know the economy's rough, but how is it my problem that you can't afford the place you're moving into? Maybe find a place that's cheaper. Like, what are you talking about? Also, the biggest crux of this that really is incredibly creepy is them literally luring you over to their place and being like, let's meet up in person. Let's talk face to face. Come on over, pal. And I'm imagining someone you haven't talked to in like 10 years or something. Some crazy circumstance where it's like, dude, I have no reason to talk to you right now. Like, what is going on right now? This seems incredibly sketchy, and I also want nothing to do with it. I'm also really surprised that you even went through with the donation after they were acting sketchy in the first place. Like, bro, you were accommodating all the way to the end, saying like, okay, we'll take the donation, but this is really weird, and I'm just gonna get in and out of there as fast as I can. Like, I would have blocked these people and been like, I don't need it, see ya, I'm out of here, bye. So truly, this is not your fault. This is some weirdo trying to take advantage of you, and they thought that, yeah, maybe if I get them here, I'll like force them to let me live with them. That sounds like a nightmare, and that is not how the world works, so I would not worry about this for another second. If you haven't already, then please subscribe to Am I the Jerk? I mean, what are you doing? You mean to tell me you're going through our videos without knowing when the next one's coming out? I mean, come on, man. You gotta subscribe to stay up to date. Hit that bell to turn on notifications. You know, the whole spiel that everybody else always says. You gotta click it. But also, while you're at it, please subscribe to Am I the Genius? We absolutely adore them over here at Am I the Jerk. Like, seriously, anytime I see their videos pop up, I'm just like, ooh, they're making more stuff. I love it. Am I the Genius is like that cool friend that shows up at a party where you're just like, finally, they're here. Now we can get started. Let's do this, baby. So you don't want to miss out on the party, do you? So go subscribe to them. Check it out. They're in the description right now. Please check them out. Also, if you want to submit your own stories or your experiences, please go to AmITheJerk.com/submit. It's the best place anywhere to get your experiences out there in the world. I mean, we're checking those constantly. We're trying to find the best ones and share them. So definitely check that out and submit your stories. I also want to show some love to Cameron Loves Art. They literally popped up and said, wow, I'm so early. I've been subbed since 2023. And dude, that's awesome. Thank you so much for being subscribed for so long. But that also kind of makes me curious. Like, leave a comment down below. How long have you been subscribed to the channel? Let's see if we can find the person who's been here the longest. And yeah, I totally recognize I'm opening up like a battle royale in the comment section, but hey, that's what I'm here for. I love the chaos and I want to see it happen. But without further ado, let's get back to the video and get to the next story. Am I the jerk for not wanting to share my money with my rich in-laws? Because I'm finalizing my trust with my husband, and I really just don't think his family should get a single penny of any of the money I've made. And this simply comes down to the fact that they are absolutely rich. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I come from a family with little money growing up. We were able to get by, but we definitely were not well off by any accounts. My parents drilled into my head that I needed to make money to be happy, so that's exactly what I did. My parents, of course, never figured it out, and siblings did not follow suit. Well, I made a few $100,000 in real estate and some in the stock market. My husband's family consists of millionaires, and not crazy rich, but extremely comfortable. And this involves like his parents and his two siblings. Funny enough, he's the only one who hasn't made a significant amount of money, and he's been working modest jobs ever since he was in his 20s. And on top of that, he's never been much of a saver. So when we decided to finally get married, I paid for the wedding. I paid for the down payment on our house, and pretty much everything we have accumulated up to this point has been because of my financial decisions. Well, cut to this evening. My husband and I are attempting to finalize our trust, and we get to the section related to failure of descendants. He wants to split the money between all of our nieces and nephews in the event our children are deceased, but I want to leave most of it to my sister and my family. An argument ensues, and he makes some pretty crappy comments about my family making poor financial decisions, and I fire back by making some comments about how the money we have being because of me and my financial decisions. Well, needless to say, it got ugly, and we're now on separate floors of the house because of it. I understand him wanting to leave money to his family because he loves them, but I want to leave money to my family because they need it. So am I the jerk here? Because I don't know what else to do. Okay, in my opinion, the second he starts making comments about your family, that means the gloves are off and you can make comments about his. Like, what is he talking about? Oh, they make poor financial decisions. Yeah, but your family's a bunch of millionaires. Like, what are we talking about? They do not need this money for a second. This isn't some like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a gift when things are hard. This is literally inheritance money, dude. Like, why would your rich family get any of it? I'm sorry, but like, if we're looking at this realistically, most of it really should go to the original poster's family. They don't have a lot of money. They've tried their best, I'm assuming, but it just didn't work out, and that's life, man. So yeah, if this guy really wants to take shots at your family, then you have every right to fire back. So no, you're definitely not the jerk here. Today, I was tipped only $5, literally all because of the stupidest circumstances you could possibly imagine. Because this table literally felt impossible to please, and I just don't know what I could have done differently. Here's what happened. Okay, when it comes to my job, I work at a steakhouse. It's not fancy, but trust me, it's also not cheap. I had a table today of 3 gentlemen, each ordering a different rendition of our 16-ounce ribeye steak. And these steaks were cooked to order, ranging from rare, medium rare, and all the way to medium. Now, the guys who ordered the medium and rare were enjoying their meal, but the second time I checked on the table, medium rare explained to me that his cut was too fatty. Oh, this is just too tough and I am really not happy. Because he was complaining, oh, the other guy's steaks are just melting in their mouths. He looked at me and said, this is pissing me off a lot. I then apologized, grabbed another plate, and asked that he put the steak on said plate so I can show the cooks and get him another one. So I go to the cooks, and as they grumbled because it's a $35 steak, they still made another 16-ounce medium rare steak for the gentleman, and we even threw the original away. And during this entire time, the guy who ordered the medium rare eats his vegetables and baked potato. When it comes out, I take it to the table, and this guy pokes it with a toothpick, and he says, oh, it looks better already. And I then walked away to help another table. But when I came back to ask if it was better, the other guy in the group who ordered the medium steak laughed and said, oh, he is not happy. The disgruntled guest then asked for a box, in which his third friend who ordered the rare steak took a bite of the new steak and shrugged, saying it tasted fine. But the original guy who wanted this replacement literally said, oh, it doesn't even taste like a ribeye. I then explained that if they took it home, I couldn't do anything like a discount, but I would love to offer a pie or like a cinnamon roll to compensate if they did take the steak. But one of the guys who was actually paying for it said, oh, just leave the steak, I'm paying for it. I then went to a manager and had them remove the steak completely. Now, since this guy actually ate his potato, we charged him $4.99. When I first dropped the check, they asked if we did military discounts, which effectively dropped the bill from over $100 without the third steak to now just about $94. Well, they flagged me down and said, oh, there's been a mistake. They didn't have a side of mashed potatoes. And I then explained that since the potato and some of the vegetables were eaten, my manager made the decision to charge for at least the potato. And I guess maybe I'd put down like mashed potatoes instead of the baked potato. Now, I appreciate any and all tips. Like, I don't mind percentage-wise because it adds up and I'm grateful regardless. So at the end of it, I was basically only left like $5. Now, normally I would not have even blinked, but what really caught my attention is what they wrote on the check. They had written down that that potato had hurt my tip. And honestly, I was baffled and I still am even to this day. Okay, bro, I've been there, man. I have been a server and I've been shafted by customers before, and it's never a good experience. So trust me, I get it. It sucks, but it is what it is, and you just move on, even if the customer is idiotic like the guy in this one. My siblings want to reconnect with me, even though they keep defending our parents who made my life a living nightmare as a kid. And so after that, I decided to cut them off again, which has in effect put me in a really weird situation because I just don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, to start things out, my parents forced me to be responsible for my siblings from a very early age. When I was 5 years old, it was making sure that my siblings were supervised when my parents went to the store or even did things just around the house. They had me dress my brother when he needed to go out or go to bed, and he was in my room, so I was supposed to make sure he didn't wander outside at night. Those last two things, by the way, also included my sister, who was like 3 years old maybe at the time. Then when they were starting school, I had to walk them to and from school with me, and since I walked alone before then, I had to help with homework after school as well. I was also supposed to give my siblings an after-school snack before or during homework if they got hungry, and there were also like roughly 4 times a week of babysitting most weeks. I was also responsible for making sure my siblings behaved well and did what they needed to do. So if one of them broke something, I was punished and not them. If they didn't do their homework and our parents were notified, I alone was given the consequences. When they were being loud, I would get yelled at for not keeping them under control. They knew it was happening and I used to beg them to act better, but my brother and younger sister would just completely ignore me. My baby sister would listen some of the time, but then she would push back if she got annoyed at me for any reason. My siblings acted out badly from 3rd grade all the way until high school. Luckily, I wasn't at home for all of them being in high school. But when my brother started high school, I was so done. I blame my parents, but I also blame them for doing nothing to help me. I saw our parents as failures, and I considered my siblings bad siblings who hadn't earned me sacrificing for them. By the time I was 16, I was 1 foot out the door and planning my escape, and I knew from around that age that I would be going no contact with all of them, and I really didn't care that they were going to miss me. The resentment and anger and hate that I had for my whole family was through the roof. They could feel it in the months leading up to me leaving. They would push for me to say why I was mad. They wouldn't believe me when I told them, and then they pushed more with the belief that I was lying. There was a day my brother and youngest sister were really stuck on math and science homework respectively, and I just completely ignored them even though I know for a fact I could have helped them out. In fact, I finished up my homework and still ignored them. I told them to figure it out for themselves and to leave me alone. And of course, that also got me in trouble, but I was beyond caring at that point. My parents argued with me every single time I brought up the unfairness of the situation. They told me if I had to miss out on an after-school activity or on my friends or even on my own homework, then it was completely fair because my siblings needed me. They would also make me stay home if one of my siblings was sick. I was told that my job was to do my part so both my parents could work. And you know what else they did? They saved for my siblings to go to college or do whatever they want in the future. And yet I didn't even have a bank account until I opened my own. When I found out about my siblings, all they told me was that I was being a jerk and a drama queen. And my brother even chimed in and insulted me as well. Well, fast forward and let me tell you something. The years of no contact were the best years of my life, and I've honestly given zero thought to reconciling until now. And it's only because my siblings finally contacted me. They told me they missed me and they love me, and they wanted a real sibling relationship with me now. I replied a little and I told them I really wasn't sure, but they said they could prove it would be worth it. But they are also trying to convince me that our parents did the best they could and that I've been way too harsh on all of them. They then asked me if I resented them all still, and I said partially. I told them I knew our parents were to blame, but they never made it easy on me either. Then they went right back to saying, well, it's unfair to say our parents were to blame. And I was like, you know what? Leave me alone. I'm better off going no contact with you people. They begged me to stop and don't do it, but I told them, look, we need to have a relationship with each other, and that's it. Like, I'm sorry. But if I'm being completely honest and I'm looking at all of the things going on, I am having a hard time with it. All the work I did in therapy to release most of that resentment will go completely out the window if we reconnect. And I can already say that with a lot of confidence because I feel like none of them appreciate how I was treated badly during my childhood. Plus, I was never given a chance to be a kid like they were. Worst of all, they still see our parents as blameless, which just blows my mind. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Do I need to just suck it up and reconnect with my siblings, even though they're defending my parents, which honestly is mind-blowing, and it's making this entire situation even worse? Okay, I'm gonna be completely honest here, and maybe I'm a heartless jerk, but dude, I would happily go no contact with these people again. I would cut them off, I'd be like, good luck, have fun, see ya. Because dude, are you kidding me right now? They're really defending the people that made your life miserable. Plus, it sounds like they didn't even like try to apologize for being annoying little jerks when you were kids. Because holy crap, they knew what they were doing. They knew for a fact they were getting you in trouble. They knew that anytime they cried or screamed, you would be the one left with a check and they could get away scot-free. And I honestly, dude, I don't know if I could handle something like that growing up. I think I would lose my mind and be like, dude, I'm moving out. I'm not dealing with this. I'm not living in this household where I'm treated as some kind of like indentured servant, dude. Like, good Lord, dude, these guys got a free college experience. Meanwhile, you're getting nothing. You're being treated like a servant instead of a kid. Like, that is so unfair. And it started so early too. So yeah, man, I say keep the peace, especially your peace. I would go no contact so fast that their heads would spin. I'd be like, yeah, I'm out of here. See ya. Because if they really can defend their parents and be like, oh, they didn't do anything wrong, your trauma doesn't matter. Like, bro, that would be more than enough for me to cut them off and never talk to them again. And in my opinion, I think that's exactly what you should do as well. An entitled Karen keys my car after I take a handicapped parking space that she claims she got to first. And now, after reporting her to the police, as well as catching her on camera vandalizing my property, she's now in complete denial, claiming that we keyed our own car just to get her in trouble. And I'm honestly still blown away by this level of entitlement. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened roughly 2 weeks ago. My mother and I were pulling into a car park for a Home Bargains. And to my non-UK readers, this is a relatively large shop that sells basically everything for cheap. We drive a brand new convertible BMW, and trust me, this will be important later on. My mother pulls into a disabled parking space, and we get ready to go into the shop. And this is the last available disabled parking space in the car park. Now, for additional context, my mother has issues with her back, and she can't stand or walk for very long without serious pain. So we have a disabled badge to park closer to the shop entrances. Now, as I'm getting out of the car and walking around to the boot or the trunk of the car so that I can grab some bags, a woman who is the entitled Karen of this story starts screaming at me, saying that we can't park there. She looks at us and says, "Excuse me." When she says this, I turn around and I'm making a confused face because I literally don't know what's happening right now. She says to me, "You just took my parking spot." Now, this is absolutely not true, as she was behind us when we pulled in. I responded by saying, well, I wasn't driving, so I'm sorry, I guess. This entitled Karen then says, "This spot is for disabled people and parents with children. You need to move now. I have children in the back." I looked at her and I said, "I have a disability badge in the car. We are allowed to be here." This Karen looks at me up and down and says, "You don't look disabled in the slightest. These are only for disabled people." Now, before I could begin to explain my mom's situation, she cuts me off and starts shouting, "People like you disgust me. You think you're entitled to park anywhere you want. You need to move your stupid car right now before I call the police." At this point, she's out of the car and she's getting very close to me, shouting in my face. Up until now, my mom was waiting in the car for me to grab her a trolley to lean on while we shop. However, when she heard the shouting, she came out of the car. My mother then started shouting, "Hey, that is a child. Why are you getting in her face?" Now, my mom used to work in a bar, so she can be very scary when she wants to be. The entitled Karen then started screaming at my mom, "You can't park here. This is for disabled people and parents only, you stupid idiot. I have 2 kids that are hungry. I need this spot." My mom responds by explaining she has a medical condition and that she's allowed to park here and that it's all none of her business. She then goes over and grabs the badge and shows it to this woman. Now, this entitled Karen was shouting at my mom as she was walking away, "Women like you feel like you could do anything that they want. You're absolutely vile." And when the Karen said this, I think she was referring to my mother's appearance and the brand new car. My mom is very pretty for context here, and she probably assumed that we were very well off, but we definitely are not. Now, I've walked away at this point, and a few more words were exchanged while my mother flashed her badge that I didn't fully hear. She gives us a dirty look and calls my mother a lady of the night, if you know what I mean. And this Karen is doing this as she's driving off to park somewhere else. So we go into the shop and carry on about our day. Well, a boy around my age, who is presumably the entitled Karen's son, comes up to me and my mother while we're shopping and is profusely apologizing for what happened. But we tell him it's not his fault and just walk away. We're in the shop for about 40 minutes, and it's then that we come out to see the passenger side door of our car has 3 huge scratch marks down the side of it. This Karen actually keyed our car because we parked where we were allowed to. Well, we straight away connect the dots, and my mother goes inside to speak to the security team while I phone the non-emergency police line to report it. Fast forward a few days, and we get word from the police that they identified the woman who did it from a security feed that literally showed her doing it and her license plate number on the feed of the argument between her and the two of us. Like seriously, how stupid was she to do it in broad daylight, literally in front of a busy shop? According to the police's information, she denied everything and is persistent in saying we did it ourselves to frame her. We are currently awaiting a court date for vandalism and the insurance payout to get the car fixed. We have the security footage of her scratching up the car as evidence, so I think we'll be fine in terms of the insurance and the courtroom. But regardless, I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction. Wow, you've got to be a special kind of stupid to key somebody's car, all because they park somewhere they're absolutely allowed to park in. Like seriously, what was this lady thinking? Like not only does she come about this the wrong way by screaming at these people, but to actually vandalize someone else's expensive property, namely their car door, all because you didn't get what you want? Like that is insane in my opinion, and there's no good excuse for this. So hopefully the court case and all this other baggage just gets taken care of, because this entitled Karen absolutely deserves to get in trouble. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My job is incredibly picky and likes to micromanage you in every aspect of your job. And after getting written up for several small minor infractions, I am now at my breaking point and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a server and I feel like the micromanaging of my managers is a bit out of control. I don't solely blame them because it's the overall culture of where I work, or perhaps I'm just too sloppy. So honestly, if I do fit the bill, please let me know what you think. At the place I work, if you leave any kind of mess, no matter how small it is, someone will be bringing it up. For example, I had to open a bag of Parmesan cheese the other day, and I set the scissors down on the counter about 3 feet from where they belong, and I just forgot to put them back. About 4 minutes later, my manager comes over and says, "Hey, did you use these scissors? Why didn't you put them back?" They will literally ask who left these out to coworkers, then ask you why you didn't put whatever it is away. Now, maybe I'm a bit too relaxed, but if I see a simple, harmless mistake, I just chalk it up to someone being busy and that they made a human mistake. And if you just give them a few minutes, they'll probably correct it. So don't immediately jump on their case, because either way, I will just grab the scissors and put them away myself. Well, last night, I was waiting on a 20 top, and at the end of the night, I admittedly screwed up and forgot to do part of my side work. I left out a bowl of cheese, some oil and vinegar, and a pitcher of water at my side station. And guess what? When I got to work today, I was written up for it. They said that I regularly make messes and I don't clean them up. And I fully admit that it was my fault, but am I being too sensitive and thinking that this is kind of a petty write-up? I think I'm especially feeling butthurt about this because I step up in other ways that no one else does, and I get no validation for it. For example, I will regularly get a broom and dustpan and try to sweep things up, and I'll pull things out of the shelves and I'll clean them up. I'll even spray down my chairs with disinfectant. I also came from a background of way more teamwork, so if I see another server's table need something, I will literally just get it myself. I'll fill the water up, I'll pull plates, etc. But the thing is, the other servers rarely do this. It's like they have a very strict set of things that they will do, and if you expect them to bail you out in any way outside of that, you are literally on your own. And I've never seen another server do these things that I try to do. I'm not even saying that I'm all that great. I'm just not used to a restaurant where they're watching everything you do like a hawk, but they're only looking out for the bad things that you do. I never hear a word of praise, but the moment I leave scissors out or leave some cheese out, they will write me up saying that I make too many messes and I don't pull my weight. The difference is I'm a bit absent-minded, and in the moment I'll forget small things. So it's this kind of micromanaging that just ruins my will to go above and beyond in any kind of way. So am I wrong in this situation? What should I do? Okay, as someone who has worked in a situation like this, where I had everybody micromanaging everybody else, I can say confidently that the only way to survive this kind of working environment is to literally only look out for yourself. The management and your coworkers are stuck in this weird toxic cycle where if anybody makes a mistake, they're gonna report each other, which basically forces them to only think about themselves and not help out anybody else. And this, in my opinion, is a super toxic work environment, and you can absolutely do better than this. Like, I'm surprised you even work there still, because this sounds awful. Because here you are trying to help out your other coworkers, but you're never getting that same kind of treatment in return. Like, you literally go out of your way to help them out and fill up their pitchers of water and pull plates off of their table, and yet yet they will never do the same thing for you. So no, this kind of micromanagement is not only not normal, but also it's indicative of being an awful work environment. And in my opinion, you can find a much better job than what these people are offering. Am I the jerk for refusing to pay for my friends in a restaurant, as they've basically labeled me as the rich friend of the friend group? Because right now I am frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old female and I have an amazing group of friends from university. There's 7 people in total, and we met in our second year and have been super close ever since. For context, we go to a relatively expensive college with no scholarship, so it's safe to assume all of us are somewhat well off. When we were first getting to know each other, we often went out for brunch and drinks and split the bill most of the time. However, I've been brought up to never let others pay and would offer to cover the bill whenever I could. No one else offered to cover, but I believe it's just not common where they're from. A few months ago, we were talking about our parents' occupations, and I told them about my family. A quick Google search of my name brings up my father's page. However, they never connected the dots regarding our relation. My father is well known in the real estate industry, and he makes quite a bit of money. But ever since then, I've been labeled as the rich friend in our group. Whenever we go shopping, I'm expected to buy expensive items for myself and Uber everywhere instead of using public transport. When I do shop cheaper, it becomes a spectacle. I also feel guilty whenever I pull out only my portion in cash, since I can tell it makes everyone else uncomfortable to then dig through their bags for their share. Therefore, I often just end up covering anyways. A few weeks ago, it was one of my friend's 21st birthday, and I told him I would pay for an activity as a birthday gift. We went out and we had a nice dinner as a group, and I didn't mind since I offered. What bothered me was when I turned 20 recently and was hoping my friends would take care of me for one day. I usually never have this expectation, but I was really let down, since I always seem to be the one treating everyone else even on my special day. My last straw was when we went on vacation recently in my home country, and they, as usual, made plans for a pub crawl night. I initially didn't intend on going since I had scheduled dinner with my parents later that night, but I did eventually cave, and I ended up only going for a few hours. During that time, I had maybe one drink, but I had not eaten all night. I decided to call it a night after 2 hours to go have dinner with my family. Before I was leaving, however, one of my friends asked if I could cover the tab before I left. I would have usually agreed, but this circumstance felt different since I had not eaten and I barely drank anything. I also didn't want to come in the first place. This time, it seemed like they were trying to use me to pay, even if it was unintentional. I simply said that I would, but I ended up leaving without paying. I then got a text later on from one of them saying, "I thought you said you would pay. How was your dinner?" Now, we just brushed over that instance quite easily, but their behavior from that night still bothers me. It seems like I've become the rich friend character that always pays for their friends. So I really need to know, how do I fix this without coming off as some kind of jerk? What should I do? Okay, for starters, I think you need to understand that it really is not customary for someone to pay for everybody's food all the time. Like, that is not a regular occurrence, and if anything, people typically really do split the bill. So from my perspective, it really seems like your friends were taking advantage of your kindness, and not in a way that would be like beneficial towards you in the slightest. I mean, the best evidence of that is them being like, "Hey, before you leave, you want to pay for our stuff?" Like, that's just super rude, and I don't blame you for walking out. I do think the better strategy would have been saying something like, "Oh, I don't want to do that this time, I'm sorry, but I can't do it," or even something like that. Something to say that no, you don't want to do it, and this is kind of crossing some kind of boundary. But I do understand why you reacted that way, and it does kind of make sense. But seriously, you being wealthy should not ensure that you automatically pay for everything. That is incredibly disrespectful, and that is not something that you should be expected to do every single time. So I think there's a lot of ways to go about doing this, but in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would make my opinion very well known to these people, because if they really are as good of friends as you're saying, then they really should understand exactly where you're coming from. Today, I served probably the rudest customer I've ever dealt with in my life as a server, as he was rude, aggressive, and condescending literally from the get-go. And I now hope that this guy never comes back, because he was an absolute nightmare to deal with. Here's what happened. Okay, so this guy walks in with his family and he's already in a bad mood. He has the smuggest look on his face, which deepens with every teeny tiny perceived mistake from me. And this also happened when we had 50 people on the wait list and I was slammed. The host is supposed to both roll and drop off silverware, but there was none in the whole restaurant. And of course, this guy immediately complained loudly about not having any. So I had to drop everything I was doing and roll some in the back. He then rolled his eyes when I brought it back, as if he didn't believe that it wasn't my fault that he didn't have silverware a second after he sat down. He then ordered prime rib and wanted it seared on the grill. He said, "You know what a grill is, right?" When I brought refills while waiting for their food, he was staring absolute daggers into me. And then my manager tells me that I didn't pre-bust their salad plates fast enough. Oh, and he tells me the kitchen didn't catch there wasn't any prime rib, and he didn't tell me until everyone else's food was done. So my manager told the guy that the plate got dropped and he blamed me for it. So when I finally dropped off his free $30 bone-in ribeye steak, he was so red in the face he didn't even speak to me. I even asked him how it tasted after a bite, but he still didn't acknowledge me. The second he was done, I walked over and grabbed his empty plate and asked if he was ready for the check. He said to me, could you get my son a box? And could you clear some of these plates? Geez, are you new? But here's the thing. There were literally like, 3 plates on this massive 6-top table? I originally didn't want to bother him since he clearly didn't want to be bothered earlier. So I was planning on grabbing the empty plates at the end, but clearly I can't do that either. Then, whilst trying to take all of their plates in my hands, I dropped a fork by his feet. He then pointed to it and looked up smugly as if to say, see, you're a terrible server. Anyways, I sent my coworker who doesn't take any garbage to check them out, and I'm honestly at such a loss. I simply don't know all the words that I can use to describe how rude this man was. He was rude to everyone who interacted with him, and I honestly hope I never deal with him ever again. Oh yeah, that guy's a massive jerk. I know exactly the kind of person you're talking about, and it's literally someone who just comes in with a bad attitude, and they're almost ready to pick a fight with somebody. They want to find some kind of reason to complain because their life sucks. And unfortunately, you just happen to be the next person in line to catch his wrath. So honestly, having your coworker step in and try to take care of some of this order, in my opinion, was the best thing you could possibly do, because his attitude was completely unnecessary, and you did not deserve that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that she isn't actually traumatized just because we forgot to invite her to a party that she wasn't even wanting to go to in the first place? Because right now I feel really guilty about the entire situation, and I seriously now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I have 3 close friends in college, and for the sake of the story, we'll call them Grace, Matt, and Laura. Now, Laura really likes to use mental health terminology, and she explores a lot of labels from those therapist influencers online. She was told that she has an anxiety disorder and depression, but that's the only diagnosis she's been given so far. And recently, she's been exploring autism and ADHD. Matt wanted to propose to Grace, as they've been dating for a while. He's been planning the proposal for a couple of weeks, and while the proposal was very intimate between the two of them, I was also very involved in scheduling the after-proposal event at a restaurant. The specifics of that are irrelevant to the story, but it was lovely, and Grace and Matt seemed really happy. Laura told us that she didn't want to be involved in planning the proposal because it reminded her of her parents' divorce, and she said that she might come to the post-engagement party. Well, come the day of the engagement, and both Matt and I forgot to check in on Laura. I don't think it's Matt's fault at all, because he was occupied with far more important things, but I feel a bit guilty about not reminding her, so she ended up not coming to the party. The very next day, she starts posting online some dramatic things about how it was traumatizing to see how little her friends cared about her, and that she'll be updating her followers on her trauma therapy journey. She posts that she's now in a really dark place and she thinks she has PTSD. Now, for a bit of context, I am pretty sensitive to mentions of trauma and PTSD because I was diagnosed with PTSD by a psychologist in my last year of high school after something that happened in my first. I have felt a lot of guilt and shame around this because I spent a lot of time feeling that the thing that happened wasn't bad enough to count. I sometimes still get nightmares and flashbacks, but it's gotten better after therapy. I know that I have my own issues wrapped up regarding the word, and it bothers me a lot when people seem to throw the terms around without understanding their weight, but I also acknowledge that I can't stop the internet from doing its thing. I haven't told any of my college friends about this, so Laura doesn't know. At one point, she called me and started explaining how traumatized she is, and I finally just snapped at her. I said, "You are not traumatized. Stop being dramatic. You just got exactly what you asked for." Well, now I feel guilty because I feel like I was a little bit harsh, and she's posting online without naming me that one friend she thought she could rely on to support her is being awful towards her and doesn't understand how being traumatized works. However, I feel like honestly, Laura's just being dramatic about an event that's not about her. I called my mom to see what her opinion is, and she told me that I could have reminded Laura about the party, and while my point is not necessarily wrong, I could have been more sensitive. So now I'm not sure how wrong I am. What should I do? First of all, I want to say your mom is wrong because Laura is a grown adult. For context, these people are all 21 years old. Like, you should not have to remind your friend about any kind of party that she definitely knows about. So for your mom to be like, "Oh yeah, you should have reminded her," or for Laura to pretend like, "Oh my god, I'm so traumatized, my friends don't care about me," that is really stupid, and it has no legitimacy in my opinion. Because if anything, it shows how selfish Laura really is. She literally wants to make this engagement all about her. I mean, she didn't even want to show up to any of this, this and was like wishy-washy the entire time. Like, why should you be responsible for her emotional state? Like, that doesn't seem logical at all in my opinion. And I am right there with the original poster. I cannot stand when people try to make up that they have trauma of some kind, when in reality what they're feeling are just normal feelings. Just because someone didn't remind you to go to a party that you weren't even sure you wanted to go to, doesn't mean that suddenly, oh wow, you have so much trauma, you now have PTSD. Like, no, that is not how this works, and Laura is a moron for thinking that. So in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong, because it really looks like Laura was just trying to create some drama. An entitled jerk tries to get a device fixed that would break federal laws by changing traffic lights whenever he wanted. But as soon as I called him out online, this guy ghosted me and then deleted his post. Here's what happened. So when I was scrolling through the Nextdoor app a few months ago to see what the boogeyman of the day was to these old entitled people, I came across a post asking for help from an electronics repair person with a few pictures of a disassembled electronic device and a circuit board. The poster explained he needed someone to help replace the strobe light bulb on this device and that he had asked some local shops but nobody could help him. I looked at the pictures and it seemed kind of familiar, but I wasn't 100% sure what the device was. A few others replied asking what the device was itself and that they might be able to help, but the original poster replied by only saying that it was a strobe light that flashes at 14 hertz. And that's when I thought to myself, bingo. In the totally useless knowledge part of my brain, I happen to know that traffic signal preemption devices used by police and fire trucks to change signals to green while they're en route to an emergency are strobe lights that flash at 14 hertz. And the Federal Signal Opticom is one device that looked exactly like his teardown pictures. I also happen to know that it is illegal in our state for any random person to possess one of these transmitters, and that it's against federal law for anyone to interfere with interstate commerce by changing the traffic signal at an intersection using one of these things. So I replied to him without asking what the device even was, and I cited the California Vehicle Code and the federal codes, fines, and jail sentences for using a strobe light to give himself a green light, and the enhancements if someone was injured or worse in a car accident that he caused. I then closed out, questioning if it really was worth the risk of using the light just to get to the grocery store a few minutes faster, while putting us other drivers and emergency services at risk. I then went back to check for a reply the next morning, and sadly the post had vanished into thin air. Someone must not have liked being called out on the links he was willing to go to just to try and get what he wants regardless of the consequences. Wow, that's really funny because this is obviously exactly what this was about. This guy clearly had some kind of tech that he definitely should not have had, and he was just trying to get it fixed so that he could work the system. Like, why else would he delete his posts and go dark? Like, that is so sketchy it's not even funny. So seriously, good for the original poster for calling this guy out, because if this guy got his way, he could have seriously injured somebody. An entitled jerk blocks my car in the parking lot with his moving truck and smugly declares that I need to shut up and deal with it. So I decided to get some revenge by taking his keys and throwing them into the woods. And despite the fact that he tried to call the cops on me, he not only didn't have any evidence of my interference, but also ended up owing me thousands of dollars after he vandalized my car. Here's what happened. So I lived in a high-rise apartment building, and my truck wouldn't fit in the underground parkade. It didn't have a lift kit, but it was a 2500 heavy duty with slightly larger tires, and it did have a headache rack that stuck above the cab a few inches. The apartment had a very limited number of outdoor stalls at the rear of the building, one of which I was assigned. One Saturday afternoon, I was going out with some buds from work, and when I exited the building, there was a 53-foot trailer backed up to the building with 4 guys moving furniture in. The truck was kind of jackknifed in, and the trailer was less than a foot from my front bumper. My truck was also backed in with another vehicle behind it, so literally I was trapped. I asked the first guy I saw if they could move the truck, and he said I had to ask his boss. So I asked which one that was, and then waited for the described person. After waiting 15 minutes, I asked a different guy where the boss was, and I was told he was upstairs supervising. So I went in search of the guy, and I asked him to please move his truck so I can get out. Now, truth be told, he only needed to straighten up his backup job, and I could have snuck by, but he just flat out refused and frankly was quite rude about it. He told me, well, that's some tough cookies. You can get lost and wait. So I went back downstairs to do just that, and as I was sitting in my truck smoking and listening to tunes, I noticed there was a padlock hanging off the side door of the trailer, and there was a simple huge ring of keys stuck in it. I waited until there were none of the movers around, and I decided to take the ring of keys, put them inside my jacket, and then went and threw them into some bushes some distance away. Then I went back to my apartment and called my buddies to tell them that I wouldn't be joining them. Now fast forward to about 4 hours later, and the building manager called me about the keys missing missing because the movers were done and they wanted to leave. But I told him that I didn't know what he was talking about. He then asked to meet him in the back lot, which I happily did. This boss mover was all up in my face, saying that he knew I took his rings, and there were over 75 keys on it, including the truck key, and most were one of a kind. But it was right at this moment I decided I was going to get some revenge and show this guy exactly why he should have not messed with me. So when he started yelling at me, I decided that I was just gonna play dumb. The building management suggested that we look at the surveillance video, and at that point I was a little bit scared. I didn't realize there were cameras back there, but I just played it cool. We all eventually went to the office and we watched the footage, but the cockeyed way he parked the trailer blocked most of the camera's field of view. Now you could see me get out of the truck and walk towards the trailer, but you couldn't see me actually touch the keys and then walk back beside my truck, exiting the video near the back of the vehicle. But there was literally nothing in my hands, so the footage proved nothing. Well, the boss man called the cops, but they too watched the footage. They asked me if I had the keys, which I didn't, so I said no. They then said that there was nothing further to be done. I then asked if we were done and when I was going to be able to drive my truck. I was then told to rent a car and submit my receipts, which I happily did. The truck moved the next day, but the trailer was left, perhaps out of spite, at the same angle, blocking me in all the way until Wednesday. When I was finally able to move my truck, I noted the side was scraped up and the driver's mirror was hanging down. We went back to the videotape and I clearly saw the boss man walking back and forth beside my truck, all before taking the mirror in both hands and breaking it off. So in that moment, it was now my turn to call the cops. The moving company ended up paying my car rental tab, which was $375, plus they had to pay $5,500 worth of bodywork, as well as paint, decals, and a new mirror. And I also hope it cost a bundle to replace all those keys. I lived there for 2 more years after that, and I would check on the key ring from time to time, because they were still there the day that I moved out. Okay, I don't care who you are, this is some hilarious revenge. The boss man of this story had 2 options. Either move the truck just a little bit so this guy can move out of the parking lot, or he could be a jerk and be like, oh yeah, get lost, I'm gonna stay here and you can't make me move. Like seriously, this would have taken like no time to like back up and straighten out so that you can get your car out of the way. But instead, this guy wanted to be a jerk and make your life a living nightmare. So I just love the fact that you returned the favor and decided to hide those keys. Like, I'm not a fan of inconveniencing people in any kind of way, and I definitely don't think this is a good idea if you find yourself in this situation, but seriously, this boss absolutely deserved to get put in his place. And the delicious sweet karma of him getting the cops called on him after he gets caught on camera vandalizing this guy's car, in my opinion, makes all of it completely worth it, because this idiot boss absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my ex-sister-in-law that I will not take care of my deceased ex-husband's daughter, who I have absolutely no relation to? Here's what happened. For starters, my ex destroyed my life 7 years ago. He was cheating on me with multiple women and allowed one woman in question to steal from us, which set not only him but me back because it was a substantial amount she got her hands on. And to this day, the woman is unknown because she gave fake details. Well, we divorced as a result, and one of his affair partners during the divorce admitted that she was pregnant. From what I now know, the baby was conceived after I filed for divorce, but the mother was someone in his life while we were married. My ex and I share 2 children. Our son is 11 years old and our daughter is 10. And he passed away suddenly about 8 months ago. And he was the sole parent of his daughter, who is 6 currently. Her mother did not want to be in her life, and her mother's family were also not in her life. Well, after my ex passed away, his daughter was taken into foster care, and she has remained there. I was contacted earlier in the process and asked if I would foster her and raise her with my children, but I said no, and I thought that would be the end of it. Well, my ex's sister got in touch with me a month ago, and this is the first time in years that we've communicated. Even at my ex's funeral, no words were exchanged. And yes, we absolutely have bad blood. She expected me to stay with her brother for our children, despite knowing that he was sleeping around, and I just didn't like that. She felt like I ruined my ex's life by leaving, and she told me as much. He gave me an STI that I didn't know I had until I went to get checked out after finding out about his affairs. My ex's sister told me her niece deserves a parent. She deserved a family, and that I should keep her with her siblings, and she told me to cut the BS. That she knows the reason my kids call her a half-sibling is because of me, and I can undo all the bad that I did and make things work for all 3 kids and have a happy home. She repeated over and over again that she felt her niece deserved this, and how she's on foster family 5 already, and no family have come come forward to take her. Well, I just ignored her and I ended the call without saying anything else. But she didn't give up and called me again a week ago. And she did this from a new number because I blocked her old one. And she was just repeating the same old crap. I told her she can give her niece a parent if she wants, but it won't ever be me. I told her she should want better for her niece than someone who could never love her or even want her. Well, when I said that, this caused a hysterical reaction. She told me I'm a heartless jerk who feels okay separating siblings. So seriously, am I in the wrong or am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. It's really convenient that your ex-sister-in-law is like, come on, take the kid into your home, but she herself is not willing to do the same. Like, what is going on right now? It seems like nobody wants to be responsible for this kid, but everyone wants you to take care of it in some kind of way. What, because you're a responsible mom and you already have kids? Like, she didn't have to be in foster care. Someone in the family could have stepped up and said, yes, I will take care of her. But literally none of them did, and instead they want to be like, oh, well, you should do it. You don't want to split up family, do you? But like, are you kidding me right now? The original poster's ex literally did that, what, 7 years ago? When they went around behind the original poster's back and cheated on them? Like, their thinking is so backwards, it's not even funny. So honestly, I don't blame you for staying out of this and choosing to just focus on your kids. Because in my opinion, this has everything to do with your ex's sister and their inability to take care of a kid in need. Am I the jerk for refusing to help my brother after his wife told everybody about me winning the lottery? Here's what happened. So a few years ago, I won a lottery and I became set for many lives over. Even though my name and winnings were public records, I worked hard to keep it a secret, and for the most part, it kind of worked. After verifying my winnings and setting up a trust, I finally told my family. My plan was to basically help each of my 3 brothers and my parents depending on their needs. My brother, who I will call Chris, and his wife, who I will call Alice, had 3 kids of their own, and I offered to pay for a down payment on a house that they wanted. Now, as crazy as it sounds, I was more broke the first year of winning than the year before I won because I was helping my family out. I had one rule for anybody who took money from me: don't tell anybody about my money. Well, Chris and Alice did for clout, and that unleashed a lot of people bombarding me with money requests. These were friends of theirs, friends of theirs, in-laws, and a lot of other people. For example, my brother's brother-in-law asked me to pay for a wedding in St. Lucia because his fiance wanted one, and I met the guy maybe twice in 9 years. Even though this happened back in 2021, people still bother me constantly for money. I was so mad, and I ended up cutting my brother off. This led to a rift in the family, and I largely became estranged from them. It was unfortunate because I was very close to my nephews and I wanted to spoil them. Well, last week, my other brother emailed me and said that Chris has been sick all year and he is bedridden and gets specialized care. And this has something to do with breathing problems. And I just said, well, that's sad. He said that Chris and Alice were going to lose the house because Chris had not been working. They have 4 kids from ages 4 to 15 years old, and I told him if he had something to say, then go ahead and say it. He then asked me if I would help them out by paying their outstanding bills and until they can get back on their feet. But you know what? I said no. The money isn't the issue. It's the privacy. I have no idea if they will keep their mouth shut about my helping them. I get painted as a nice rich guy, and then I have 10 people bothering me with their problems. You help them once and they'll just keep on coming back. It's funny how people just happen to have financial emergencies when you're helping others out. The other problem is that if my brother does pass away, then I don't want Alice getting a house that I paid 20% of. She and I don't get along, and she's the one who put my business out there. She was so certain that I would take care of them that she didn't even bother to say thanks for the down payment on our dream house. Now, their financial situation is very bad. I'd offer to help in other ways, but beggars want to be choosers and negotiate their charity. And before anyone might ask this, I am not setting up some sort of loan settlement with my brother and his wife. They don't have the means to pay me back, and they would just see it as a sign of weakness. Ironically, the only other people who was against giving them money is my financial advisor. So I'm really sorry that I gave them $420,000 to buy a house, and they somehow managed to mess it all up. I mean, they live in a nicer house than I do. I don't live fancy. I don't own a Rolex, and my clothes have holes in them. I bought my furniture from Big Lots, for crying out loud. My other reason for not helping is that I know for a fact that his wife wouldn't help me if the roles were reversed, and I know that she would be much less nice about it. I love my nephews, but I will not be blackmailed over them. When they come of age and reach out to me, then I'll be there for them. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk. They burned down that bridge between you and them a long time ago when they tried to go around and brag about your wealth. Like all they had to do was keep their mouths shut and everybody would have been fine. But instead, they want to go around and be like, oh yeah, my family member is really rich. They gave us all this money for this new home. And then fast forward, what, 3-4 years later, and you're still dealing with people asking you for money. Like, that is seriously obnoxious. And I don't blame you in the slightest for like not wanting anything to do with people begging for money. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would do the same thing. I wouldn't pay a single dime towards anything they're doing, because that privacy is something you can never get out. That cat is out of the bag and you are not getting it back in. And the fact that you can no longer be private about your financial endeavors, in my opinion, is more than enough reason to turn them away and move on with your life. Am I the jerk for the way I reacted when my parents surprised my 16-year-old sister with a new car, but only bought me a $25 gift card and a book for mine 2 weeks later? Because right now, my parents are calling me a jerk as well as ungrateful for not being thankful that my sister's cancer is finally gone. But despite my frustrations, I'm left feeling very confused, because at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my sister was diagnosed with cancer last year. It has been hard on our family and even harder on her. I love my sister and I tried to be there for her as best as I could. I also did everything I could to make things easier for my parents. I took over the chores, I cooked every day, I cleaned the house, I did laundry and took care of my younger sibling, and I babysat them more. Luckily, she is doing really well and has recently finished her treatment, which is great, and we are all super grateful. Our birthdays are 2 weeks apart, and hers was 2 weeks ago. Well, my parents bought her a brand new car to celebrate after everything she went through, which I understand she does deserve it, but I was a bit surprised because I didn't even think they had any money. My dad has been unwilling to help me get a used car since last year, telling me that they don't have that kind of money at the moment, and I didn't even want him to pay for all of it. I've been saving up and I just wanted them to help me with the rest, but he kept telling me that they have no money for that. Well, my birthday just rolled around, and my parents bought me a book that I mentioned in passing and a $25 takeout gift card to a place I like. Now, I thanked them for it, but they saw that I was not too thrilled, and then they asked me what was wrong. I told them that while I do appreciate the gifts, I thought they were going to finally help me with the remaining $800 for buying the used car, seeing that they could now afford a new car for my sister. But when I said that, that's when they accused me of being jealous of my sister, who had just gone through something very traumatic, and that I was trying to make everything about me, and why couldn't I just be happy for her? They said that at the end of the day, I have a job and I could just continue saving. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think what your parents did is completely inappropriate, and it seems like they're definitely playing favorites. Don't get me wrong, your sister had cancer and she's now better. And yes, sure, give her the car, like that's totally fine. But for you to get a birthday gift that is literally a book and $25 for a gift card, like that would make me go crazy. And it sounds like we're only talking about what, $800? Like they can spend what, thousands of dollars on a car, but they can't cough up $800 to try and have this somewhat equal in some kind of way. Like the level of unfairness that's going on right now, especially compared to like her and her sister, in my opinion, is off the charts. By the way, in case you don't know, new cars nowadays, like brand new cars, they are not cheap. So not only did they have that kind of money lying around that they could use on their sister, but they also lied to the original poster over and over again. And here's the part that really drives me crazy, just personally. It really seems like the parents are just trying to like gaslight the original poster and be like, oh wow, you're so jealous of your sister. But I think they're completely missing the point. This is not about jealousy. This is all about feeling completely undervalued. Like, do they seriously not see the difference in what people are getting for their birthday? Like, here we have your sister getting a brand new car, and you're getting something that maybe a cousin would gift you for your birthday. Like, that just seems really weird to me. And you know what? The original poster has earned their keep. They stepped up. They took care of the household. They literally babysat and did all the chores. They did the dishes and laundry. They did all these things to like take the pressure off of their parents and their sister. And sure, nobody's entitled to anything, but I think at least pitching in what, $800 to help get this used car would have been at least the bare minimum of what they could have done to show that they were appreciative of the original poster. Because right now it seems like it's some kind of like secondhand gift where they're like, yeah, okay, it's your birthday, here's a book and a gift card, get out of here. Like, that is super unfair. Like, that would really upset me as well. So to the original poster, I don't think you're the jerk. I think you have every right to be upset and be like, wait a second, this isn't fair. Because if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be very annoyed. I got into an argument with my husband after he left me during my surgery, and I'm honestly still so upset with him that right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female, and my husband and I have been together for 4 years, and we do not have any kids. I had a same-day lumpectomy surgery yesterday, and the tumor is not believed to be malignant, but regardless, I wanted it out since my mother had breast cancer. My husband got the day off work and drove me to the surgery. The surgery was delayed for about 3 hours, and my husband was getting impatient impatient. The surgeon finally came in and said that she expected the surgery would take about an hour. After she left, my husband said to me that he was going to leave the hospital to get lunch when I went under, since he had not eaten that day. Now, I wanted him to be able to eat, and I was trying to be brave, but I really didn't want to be left when the surgery was only supposed to be an hour, so I asked if we could pick some food up on the way home. Well, he gave me the impression that he would stay, and I was wheeled away to surgery. Fast forward to about 30 minutes later, and I was being shaken awake by a nurse who told me that I was sick and she was trying to get in touch with my husband. Apparently, during the surgery, my blood pressure dropped rapidly, and my surgeon was able to get the tumor out in about 20 minutes. My blood pressure was 70/30 by the time they got it out, and my lips had turned blue. Now, I was very sick in my room. I was bleeding through my internal stitches, and I was coming in and out of consciousness, and I was even vomiting. But all the while, my nurse was trying to track my husband down. Even my surgeon called him up, but he did not answer. But I am very thankful for the sweet nurses who took care of me and reassured me. It is the next day now, and I'm very emotional and angry about the entire ordeal. Well, my husband did not apologize and has been incredibly defensive about the entire thing. His explanation for leaving was that he went out to get lunch, and then he was getting gas because he was low for driving me around. He then started complaining that the surgery was supposed to be an hour. He then said to me, "How was I supposed to know your heart could have stopped?" I told him he had one job, which was to stay with me and tell me what the surgeon says. Now, I could get over him leaving if he was apologetic or even remorseful in the slightest, but I am completely shocked at his words and how little he seems to care for someone he claims to love. In his defense, he cared for me last night when we got home, but left today after we argued. I'm sure I'm just still really emotional from anesthesia, and maybe I'm being a bit dramatic, but I can't even look at him the same. He is usually attentive and caring, so I'm just completely baffled. I'm sure he thought the chances of anything going wrong were slim to none, but I can't understand his thought process. I sat for hours and hours in waiting rooms during all of my mother's breast cancer procedures, and I was nervous to even leave for a minute to get any food. God forbid I don't have cancer, because I don't trust him with anything medical now. Honestly, I'm very unsure of what I'm hoping to get from writing this to strangers, but I really just needed to vent because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first and foremost, I want to say I am so sorry that that happened to you. Surgery is already like super stressful as it is, so the fact that he was so flippant and just so dismissive of that is incredibly disrespectful and so unfair for you. Like, this is already such a sensitive situation that your family has gone through. This is so closely related to what your mom went through, and you're just trying to be proactive about everything and prevent anything bad happening to you in the way that it happened to your mom. So that fact alone of him not understanding that, or even trying to understand that while also being defensive, in my opinion, is so uncalled for. And here's the thing, the surgeon probably said, "Oh yeah, it's probably gonna take an hour," but I'm willing to guess that those are probably like ballpark estimates, where like, okay, maybe it'll be done in an hour, or maybe it's done a lot sooner like what happened in this story. Regardless, he's your ride home. He should have been there with you and right by your bedside when you woke up. And I think the original poster has it right, because I feel the exact same way. If he was at least apologetic or like, I don't know, not defensive in the way he was, this all could have been fixed like right away. Like, all he had to say was, "I'm so sorry for leaving, I thought it would take longer," or something to that extent. But instead he's like, "Oh yeah, I had to get gas because I was driving you around all over the place. How was I supposed to know your heart could have given out?" Like, buddy, this is your wife you're talking about. This is the person you decided to spend the rest of your life with. At least pretend like you want to be with her, because right now it's not very convincing that you even care. So truly, I'm so sorry you went through this, and I'm so sorry that your husband is a massive jerk, because the way he treated you, in my opinion, is completely uncalled for. My toxic boss treats me and my coworkers like absolute garbage, ruling with an iron fist and always saying he's gonna fire us if we do even the smallest thing wrong. So I decided to get some revenge by exposing the fact that he owes hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to various financial institutions that he was clearly trying to avoid. And I've honestly never been happier to see somebody get fired in my life. Here's what happened. To start things out, mobile phones became common in my country at around 2004, just as I finished high school. And my parents bought me my first phone, which was a second-hand Nokia. It was bulky and basic, but I promised myself that someday I'd buy a new phone with my own money. When college started, I had a 2-hour daily commute. In high school, I excelled academically and won several district-level awards. These awards were being distributed during my first year of college, and one nationalized bank award finally gave me enough money for a new phone. So I bought a Sony Ericsson K300i, and I also got a premium SIM card, not realizing that it had been abandoned by its previous owner. By the third day, day, I started receiving calls from a guy who we will call Brandon from various financial institutions. It turned out the number previously belonged to him, and for 20 years, I've been getting these calls. Determined to get my premium number, I began a routine of blocking wrong numbers. Back then, blocking was device specific, so each time I got a new phone, I had to start over and keep a list of numbers that I wanted to block. Fast forward and I got my first job after graduating in 2009. Around 2010, I was assigned to a new project with a notorious reputation for burning people out due to a nefarious project manager named Bran. I didn't know his full name for quite a while, but he took pride in making our lives a living nightmare. Bran ruled with an iron fist. From the moment his team stepped into the office, they were met with a barrage of emails and messages, each more important than the last. Bran thrived on creating chaos, often changing project deadlines on a whim, demanding his team work late into the night and through the weekends. Bran's presence loomed over every task. He insisted on micromanaging every single detail, and yet he was quick to take credit for any success, no matter how small it might be. But failures were met with his notorious tirades, publicly berating his team and assigning blame without hesitation. His unpredictable temper kept everybody on edge, afraid to make the slightest mistake. Meetings were another tool in his arsenal for torment. He scheduled them during lunch breaks and after hours, ensuring that no one could escape his grasp. These meetings were often pointless, serving only to reinforce his dominance and disrupt any semblance of work-life balance his team might have had. His relentless stream of emails continued around the clock, each carrying a thinly veiled threat: either be perfect or get dismissed. Under his reign, morale plummeted and burnout soared, yet Brand remained oblivious, satisfied only by his complete and total control. I was quite ashamed when I learned that he was from the same area that I was, and had gone to the same school even though it was years before me. In 2012, our company merged with a parent company. Almost nothing changed personnel-wise, but infrastructure-wise, we got Microsoft Outlook as well as an organization view. And that's when I first learned about Brand from an organizational hierarchy perspective. His full name was an absolute eye-opener. It was Brandon. Now, the name was common enough, but at the time, mobile numbers had an area-specific pattern, so I already knew that the previous owner of my number was from the same area as me. But still, it could be somebody else, so I needed to dig deeper. I talked with an old mentor who lived in the same area and had coached several high school students for the last 2 decades, and he confirmed my suspicions. I won't go into the details, but it was evidence that Brandon and Brand were the same person. I had been quite pissed off with this unknown person named Brandon for almost a decade by then, and Brand had been the bane of mine and my coworkers' existence for quite some time. So this is where my revenge takes place. First, I unblock all the numbers in my phone, as I was getting maybe 5 to 6 calls on a daily average. But after unblocking about 150 numbers, it suddenly increased to 15 to 18 people. And in that moment, my answering strategy changed drastically. Instead of saying, "Oh, this is the wrong number," I politely explained that the owner had changed his number and then provided his current number to update their database. And this is where I might be a jerk, because I also volunteered his manager's number, just in case he tries something else. Well, the fallout to my decision was epic. Apparently, these people had been trying to find him for almost a decade. Several banks had sold his debts to companies that literally bother people for a living to get their money back. And it turned out he had been taking loans in everybody else's names, namely his wife, his parents, his uncles, his aunts, and he was giving everyone that same number. He was evading credit card debt and loans of upwards $200,000. And apparently he had almost 20 cases filed against him, but nobody could ever find him, which is probably why he thought he could walk on water. There are multiple versions of what happened at the office when his manager started to get calls about him. But as a result, he was let go about 2 months later, and I'm so happy to say that I never heard from him ever again. This is one of those situations where yes, revenge is oh so very sweet. This guy made your life a living nightmare in this office. He ruled with an iron fist, and he basically made everybody afraid that they were going to lose their job at the drop of a hat. Like seriously, that is so annoying, and I can't stand managers that act that way. But the really funny part here for me is that you had this guy's old number. You had the number that he used to try and get by on these stupid loans he was never going to pay back. Never mind the fact that he was opening loans in other people's names just so he could try to get some extra money for God knows what. Like, that is so unethical and so toxic, it's not even funny. So good for you for taking this scumbag down, because from the sounds of it, this guy absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My entitled sister-in-law is constantly putting her needs above everybody else's, as her entitlement has reached a break breaking point in my mind that at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my family had their annual dinner tonight. The youngest sister is an alcoholic, like straight up, so she doesn't have a car and always needs a ride. Last year, the eldest sister was her chauffeur and didn't get to visit with the family as long as she wanted to because her baby sister was whining that she wanted to go home. But this year, my husband said that he'll chauffeur his baby sister. We are all aging, and last year the eldest brother passed away, so you would think that the baby sister could deal with a few hours of family, but no, apparently that's just not possible. The second she's done eating, she's ready to leave. I said to her, you know you can't bully him into leaving like you do. So he told her to relax and let him finish eating. The next thing I know, she's asking the widow of the eldest brother to help her in the bathroom. And in that moment, I knew I should have followed, and I wish I had, because the alcoholic convinced the widow to let her use her phone. She then called a member of her church to come and give her a ride home. However, before that good Christian showed up, my husband was ready to leave. We're driving home when the eldest sister calls me to find out if she's with us, and that's when I find out the person from church is at the restaurant to pick her up. My husband then asked her, wait, what is going on? But of course, we get no answer. I then asked her why she would do that, and she actually tells me it's none of my business. I said, if you called someone from the church for a ride, why are you in our vehicle? Well, she just says, I want to go home. I'm not talking to you. So I said, good, then hear this. You are obnoxious in your entitlement, and I'm tired of you acting like a baby. You say things like, be my chauffeur, pay for my food, buy me drinks, let me finish your beer. And that's because if you don't get your way, you will just figure out who to manipulate next. Now, at about that time, we exit the interstate, and on the side of the road, there's a homeless woman yelling crazy. I then looked at my sister-in-law and said, look, there's your future. But I'm honestly still annoyed by my sister-in-law's attitude, as well as her demands to always get what she wants. Wow, I'm really surprised that anybody would drive this lady around. Like, for starters, she's not even a responsible adult. Like, not only is she an alcoholic, so she doesn't have a car, but while also getting rides from other people, she acts like she's so entitled to all this time and attention, as if anybody else's needs are not as important as hers. Like, that really must be obnoxious, and I'm just blown away that anybody's giving her the time of day. Like, if I was her brother of some kind and she's like, ooh, drive me around, and then she started acting up like that at some kind of like family get-together, I would lose my mind and not take that for a second. I would tell her straight up, you need to get an Uber because I am not taking care of you. And it's also so rude that she called somebody from church and said, hey, pick me up from the restaurant. And then when that person gets there, they're like, wait a second, where is she? She literally just inconvenienced someone to come out to a restaurant that they didn't need to go to, all because she wanted to leave right away. I want to leave right now. Like, that is absolutely obnoxious in my opinion. And I think the next time she wants to come for some kind of like annual get-together, she needs to find a ride from somebody else, because her awful behavior absolutely should not be rewarded. Am I the jerk for telling my mother-in-law that she should have tried to be a good mom if she wanted the rewards at her son's weddings? Because right now she is not happy with me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my brother-in-law, who is my husband's younger brother, had my husband and I act as parents of the groom at his wedding. My sister-in-law and my sister and my husband's children rounded out the groom's side at his wedding. Now, my mother-in-law and her husband and the children that she shares with her husband were there in person, but they were not counted among the immediate family, and they were not seated with us at any point. For reference, my husband became the father figure to his brother when their father died. My husband was 10 and his brother was 2 years old. My mother-in-law was pregnant with my sister-in-law at the time, and my husband became the head of the household. My mother-in-law basically checked out, and she would get angry at my husband for not doing better. The day my husband lost his father, he also lost his mother. She was and continues to be so cold to him. She expected so much of a 10-year-old and criticized him heavily in the years that followed. He was supposed to get amazing grades, keep the house in order, raise his siblings, help his mom out whenever she wanted, work when he was old enough, and needing to do so without ever complaining or turning to her for help. Well, his grades suffered immediately because of all that he went through. Until my husband turned 18 years old, he did 99% of the raising of his younger siblings, but they bonded with him in a very special way because of this. And I was his friend and then girlfriend at the time, so I helped as well. So they also bonded really well with me too. When my husband was 16 years old, his mom announced that she was pregnant and moved in this guy that she married in Vegas. And nobody knew anything about this beforehand. At that point, her and my husband's relationship worsened. Between my brother-in-law and sister-in-law not being bonded with her at all, and her trying to take back some parenting but them rejecting her, and my husband not caring to include his half-sibling in the parenting that he did, it all made for a very toxic mess. She wished that my husband wasn't alive. She wished that she never had him, and did this all in front of me and his siblings. When he moved out, she did all that she could to stop the siblings seeing each other, but my brother-in-law and sister-in-law acted out until she gave in. They had a lot of extended sleepovers with us, and my husband did attempt to win custody of them when we settled enough, but my mother-in-law's household was financially secure, so he was denied. But it never changed the fact that my brother and sister-in-law wanted us, but mostly they wanted him. They wanted the brother and father that they knew best of all. My mother-in-law and her family were not at mine and my husband's wedding, but as mentioned, she was at my brother-in-law's wedding because he and his sister maintained some contact. In the 2 weeks since the wedding, I ran into the mother-in-law at the grocery store, and that's where she confronted me. She complained about how unrewarding the wedding was when she was treated like she's not my brother-in-law's mom, and then she said it was my husband's fault. So I told her that she should have tried to be a good mom if she wanted any kind of reward at her son's weddings. And then after I said that, I walked right away. Because my husband and I have her blocked everywhere, she can't reach out to me, but she has been giving my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law a hard time over what I said. And she has called me a pot stirrer, as if I'm trying to stir up drama. So am I the jerk in this situation for what I said to my mother-in-law? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk. Your mother-in-law sounds like a nightmare. She not only mistreated your husband, but also she practically checked out of being a parent. She pretty much forced her 10-year-old to raise his siblings all throughout their childhood. And then she brings in some guy that she married in Vegas and then tries to be like, okay, I'm gonna be a parent again. It's like, no, that is not gonna happen. This is too little too late. And the fact that she's so blind to that and in denial that yeah, she was an awful mother, that part alone is really upsetting in my opinion. Because she absolutely knows what she did. She knows that she practically abandoned her kids and forced her son to raise them in her stead. Like that's on her, that's on nobody else. So for her to be like, wow, you guys didn't deserve that. This is your husband's fault. Like that would have lit my hair on fire. I would be so mad if somebody said that about my spouse, especially considering what they went through in front of the person who caused it. So no, you are not the jerk. And honestly, I think your mother-in-law absolutely had this coming. An entitled Karen tries to block me from parking in a parking lot by standing in my way to try and flag her friend over. And even though I tried to explain that I'd been waiting over an hour for this parking spot, this entitled Karen refused to listen, claiming that she deserved this spot way more than I did. And I've honestly never been more frustrated with anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so this just happened, and the lady who did this is sat at a table not even 5 feet away from me at the moment. So for context, I'm currently looking for work, and I spend about 4 to 5 hours on most days at my local art center. They have a really nice coffee shop and serve food, and they have free parking as well. Today, I pulled in around 10 o'clock in the morning, and they had no spaces left, so I waited for almost an hour. Parking is 2 single lanes on either side, and I am perpendicular to one of them, patiently waiting and trying not to fall asleep. Other cars come in looking for spaces, but they see that I'm waiting and then they leave. So almost an hour in, some people walk out and indicate that I am parked in front of their car. It's a nice lady with her baby and some friends, so I back up and I patiently wait for them to load up so that I can take the space. As I am watching, I see another lady slowly saunter up towards the space, looking around and nodding her head, but not paying any attention to me. She is just beyond the parking space, and once the car pulls out, she walks into the space and turns her back to me just as I am trying to pull in. I say to her, "Excuse me, miss," and I say this twice, but she just completely ignores me. So I try again, just a little bit louder, but I still stay polite. She then turns to look at me, and I ask her to please move as I'm trying to pull in. At this point, she looks surprised and says, "No, I'm keeping this space." I then explain to her that I've been patiently waiting for almost an hour for the first available space. And when I said that, she then shows her entitlement. She said to me, "You've just been parked there. You were not waiting for the space." I explained to her that I have indeed been waiting and that I moved back to let the lady with the baby load up. I then see her friend drive up with their car and I recognized it. They have driven in twice while I was waiting, also looking for parking spaces. I tell her that I've seen her car twice and that they were looking for spaces as well, and that you can't just block a space, especially after I've been waiting for almost an hour. Now, it's important to note that I didn't raise my voice and I wasn't rude, but I also was not about to give in. She then gave me a look of disgust and walked towards her friend who was asking her if we were okay. So I then just decided to park my car. They then drove off and I came in. I found a table and said hello to a friend who was at an adjacent table, and I went to order my coffee. Now, I was going to tell the barista what had happened to me, but then I realized that they were in queue next to me, so I came to the internet instead. But either way, I'm still blown away by her entitlement, as well as the fact that she seriously tried to block my parking space. Okay, I will never understand anybody trying to block a parking space with their physical body. Here's the thing, if you don't have a car and you're not in a car, then you cannot claim a parking space for a car. You can't just run out and be like, "Oh, I'm taking this spot, sorry." Like, that is obnoxious and that makes you a massive piece of garbage. footage. And the thing is, this lady absolutely knew that you were waiting for a parking space. She knew that's why you were sitting off on the corner literally waiting for an hour. They even circled the parking lot twice. Like, they definitely knew you were there, so any kind of attitude they might have about you pulling into that spot, in my opinion, is completely unwarranted. But seriously, good for you for not giving into this moron, because her entitlement was absolutely unacceptable. I'm tired of all the customers that I have to deal with on a daily basis, as I am constantly confronted with so many awful people who come into my restaurant. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I manage a fairly successful boardwalk beach restaurant on the East Coast, so naturally, this is our busy season. And I know the idea is that the more customers we have, the more likely problem customers are going to occur. I have been here for a few years, but my God, the customers we're getting this year is on a new level of unbelievable. For example, I got called racist because I wouldn't let an obviously underage person without an ID order a drink. Her friends just kept yelling that I'm racist over and over again, just to try and cause a scene. Eventually, the cops were called and I had them removed. Also, when it rains, it's an absolute nightmare. Everyone on the beach comes into our restaurant and just sits at the tables. Most of them don't order anything, and they just sit there waiting the rain out. And naturally, we get lots of people who actually want to sit and order since they're here anyways and they might as well. On top of that, the people who requested to sit outside want to now come inside because they're now getting rained on. I get into arguments with people just sitting there because we need the tables for paying customers. Like, they just refuse to move. In fact, one time we had a family sit at the table and one of them went out and brought back a pizza with drinks and started eating at our tables. Now, what was their explanation for this, you might be wondering? They claim this was a public space, so they're allowed to do this, and if I call the cops, then I'm breaking the law. And believe it or not, this is actually a very common occurrence. Now, it's also important to note that we don't allow public bathrooms, as those are only for paying customers. And the reason for this is that people from the beach will literally walk in and just trash the place. They'll drag sand into our restaurant, they'll mess up everything and get in the food, and just enter and basically destroy the toilet. And in most cases, they just clog it and then they leave. It's also a fairly small bathroom, which is typical of all the other restaurants that are trying to utilize space as much as we can. So, paying customers are stuck behind lines of non-paying customers waiting to use the bathroom. My favorite is when a non-paying customer comes up to me and says that the bathrooms are disgusting and that we should be ashamed of ourselves for allowing it to get like that. And this literally happens at least once a day. We try to keep up with it, but with how busy we get, sometimes I need bussers to bus tables or run food and not go over to check if the bathroom is clean after every single guest. There are huge public bathrooms 2 buildings down from us, and when we direct the non-paying customers there, they say they're already here and we're not allowed to deny someone to use the bathroom. Now, our state also has very strict open liquor laws. We cannot sell alcohol and allow a guest to bring it onto the boardwalk or the beach, and that's because we are the ones who would get in trouble for it. So, as you can probably guess, we had a guy who asked if he could bring his beer onto the boardwalk, but we just straight up told him no. We explained it's against the law and we point to the signs behind him that clearly say no alcohol beyond this point. He just says, "Oh, that's BS, you should have told me that before." But after we turn our backs, he just sneaks out of the restaurant. Eventually, the cops come back and they say that this guy, and yes, they described him perfectly, even down to what he was wearing, had told them that we had said he is allowed to bring drinks outside and that we had lied to him. We then pointed out the signs again to the cops and then said, "Yeah, that's what I thought, he just didn't want to pay the fine." I've also had customers bring his parking ticket in and hand it to me and told me that I have to pay it. He said that he was coming to my restaurant and that he didn't know that he had to pay for parking. But seriously, how is that my fault? Well, I just laughed and handed it back to him, which is probably not my most professional moment, and then he just started screaming and crying, demanding to speak to a manager. There are so many more instances besides this one, but honestly, sometimes customers can be the worst because they literally just don't care about anybody but themselves. Okay, just when I thought I've had some bad customer interactions, I then read this and I'm like, wow, you've had it way worse than me. I can't imagine working in one of those high traffic areas where this is like a tourist trap like the beach or an amusement park, because it seems to me it's just full of people who are super entitled, who also basically believe that they can get away with anything that they want. And this post is just a few glimpses into that. So truly, I'm sorry you have to deal with such awful customers, and hopefully your job gets better in the long run. An entitled neighbor causes over $100,000 worth of damage to my niece's house, leaving my niece's home practically in ruins. And at this point, we seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. So my niece has a next door neighbor who we will call Lewis for the sake of the story, and they are your typical entitled jerk. He's just a very unpleasant guy who will complain about minor infractions, such as cutting your grass and getting lawn clippings on his driveway. But also, he won't hesitate to blow his leaves into her yard when he's cleaning up his yard. Like I said, this guy's a massive jerk. My niece and her little boy went on a 2-week trip to the United Kingdom, and my teenage son house sit for them the first week. And honestly, there were no issues. They were due back on Monday evening, and her ex-husband, who she's still friendly with, stopped by the house to make sure everything was in order, stock her fridge with some essential items, as well as many other things. Well, he was outside and noticed something unusual about a pipe that ran down the outside of the house and emptied into the grass on the side of the house. The AC in their house has a kind of weird setup where there's an outside unit but also something up on the 3rd floor, and this is attached to the pipe on the house. The condensation runoff from the AC unit flows out of the pipe and empties into the yard. Well, the jerk next door plugged the pipe so that the runoff wouldn't go onto his driveway, which borders my niece's house. The plug pipe caused all of that runoff to back up and spill into her house. It ruined the carpet on the 3rd floor and then dripped down into the bottom 2 floors and into the basement, where it ruined clothing, furniture, toys, and so much more. And my niece's ex didn't realize this yet when he discovered the plug pipe. While he is examining the pipe, Lewis comes out to yell at him for being in his yard. They exchanged some words and Lewis got his stupid feelings hurt, so he ended up calling the cops. Now, I should mention that my niece's ex is Indian, so he's this brown man that Lewis probably mistakes as Middle Eastern. The cops show up, and fortunately, they realize that Lewis is a massive jerk, and they tell him to go back into his house and stop calling the cops on his neighbors for no good reason. And even still at this point, nobody is aware yet of the damage in the house. But when the ex went into the house, he saw the dripping water, realized the extent of the damage, and concluded that the plug pipe caused the destruction. He called the cops back out to see what had happened. And again, the cops were really cool about this. They looked at all the damaged areas, they took pictures, and told my niece's ex to go to the police station in the morning so that they could file a police report, because the tampering on their property was likely criminal, and the amount of damages they have sustained could elevate the charges to a felony. Now, my niece's brother is a lawyer, so he's in touch with the police to work that end of it. And my niece's home insurance agent is a friend of hers. They've already sent out an adjuster to figure out damages, and our greatest hope is that Lewis will face criminal charges for what he did, and that my niece's home insurance company will sue him like crazy to try and recoup the damages. Now, I don't know. I've never been through this before, because I don't have a jerk neighbor who thinks they can go onto their neighbor's property and do whatever they want. I think it all will work out for my niece, but it is a tremendous hassle, and it's infuriating because Lewis is such a jerk, and she has to walk on eggshells to keep him from having some kind of outburst. But now the gloves are off, and we're going to unleash the most annoying poor neighbor behavior that we can on this guy. And I'm over at her house a lot, so we're talking loud music, barking dogs, and yelling kids. My son is a guitarist with an amp that goes all the way up to 11. It won't even take behavior that is obnoxious or disruptive to the entire neighborhood. But because Lewis is such a jerk, he freaks out over anything, so it won't take much time to drive him over the edge. Wow, Lewis literally is a piece of garbage. The amount of damage that he probably caused to this house, especially when you consider water damage, is most likely extremely expensive. Like, that is not a joke. That is like some serious damage that's going to take a long time to figure out, and it's going to take a lot of money just to get it all sorted out. The original poster even clarifies that they're pretty sure it's about $100,000 worth of damage to the house. So hopefully this guy gets nailed down for all the damage he did to the house, because his behavior is absolutely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled jerk tries to tell me how to do my job, despite the fact that he literally has no idea what he's talking about. But after being annoyed for several minutes, regardless of me asking him to go away, I decide to maliciously comply, resulting in him getting humiliated in a way I hope he never forgets ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 34-year-old male, and I had always been doing multimedia for my church for years and years. So stuff like displaying lyrics and creating PowerPoint slides are like second nature to me. I was scheduled to take care of the multimedia this morning, so as usual, I came and created what was needed. I set up all of the lyrics, I set up the Bible verses, and I put together all the slides that was sent from the speaker before I went to the restroom. When I get back, I saw the guy who we will call Nate, who usually plays the bass, but he wasn't on the schedule today, and I saw that he was having a conversation with another person behind the multimedia station. I went back to my station and started pre-displaying everything on the screen to make sure that I can read everything, and I did that before I noticed that Nate is looking at my station. Well, 5 minutes before we start, Nate suddenly asked what I prepared, and I showed him everything. I showed him the lyrics, the Bible verses, the slides, and I did that just to satisfy his curiosity. Now, as a side note, I don't really like Nate for several reasons, and that's because he believes in a lot of conspiracies that people share on social media, and when someone questioned him, he would just argue nonstop. So most of us just try to avoid starting a conversation with him in general, and that includes me. Also, whenever he's scheduled to play the bass, he turns his amp's volume quite high, and it's so much higher than the other instruments that I can actually feel the vibrations every time he plucks his bass, and the multimedia station is at the very back of the room. Needless to say, he is just super obnoxious. Well, apparently his obnoxiousness is at a high rate today, because as soon as he saw the slides I prepared, he said that the font is too small. He didn't just say, oh, it might be a bit too small. No, he said, it's too small. But I told him it's fine. It's the regular font size we all use week after week. But he literally wouldn't drop it. By this time, the service started, but for some reason, he didn't go to find an empty seat in the audience. Rather, he sat on a stool behind my station, while repeatedly telling me that the font is too small. By this point, I was listening to his font mantra behind me, while also displaying the lyrics for the singers. After a couple of minutes, I asked him if he's planning to sit with the audience, and I kid you not, this is what he said to me. Your font is way too small, you need to increase it. And when he said that, I couldn't believe it. He is so fixated on my slide's font size that he refused to leave me alone until I fulfill his wishes. By this point, even the pastor's wife asked him to please have a seat in the audience, in which he told her that it's better for him to sit there, because if he sat in the audience, he wouldn't be able to see anything. And at that point, I had had enough, so I decided to maliciously comply. While still controlling the displayed lyrics, I also edited the slides while he watched, so I was basically multitasking. Mind you, the service has already begun, so I can't actually display the slides just to make sure. I increased the font so big that the slides looked ridiculous. Before, there were only 10 slides, and one slide contained 6 to 7 lines of 2 to 3 Bible verses with a translation section below it. But now, there are about 40 slides with 15 plus lines that contain only words in each of them. I can barely fit the translation part, and each slide could contain only one verse. It looked totally atrocious. After witnessing his destruction, he patted me on the back and gave me a thumbs up, and then he finally went to find an empty seat. I then looked at the pastor's wife, and even she shook her head. Well, during the sermon, it was extremely awkward. The speaker was having a difficult time reading from the screen because he kept pausing after each line. I also have to switch the slides quicker than before because each only consisted of one verse, which interrupted the speaker's pace. After 10 minutes, the speaker gave up and just read from his own Bible, which most audiences just followed suit. I witnessed many audiences pulled up their own Bible app from their phone and just read it from there, including Nate himself. I then texted Nate. I said to him, "Why are you reading from your phone? I thought you wanted the font larger so you could read from the screen." And in response, he just turned at me and glared at me silently. After the service was finished, the speaker approached me and asked if everything is okay, because the slides didn't look like what I usually made. The pastor's wife approached us and was very apologetic and explained everything. Then we looked over for Nate, in which we couldn't find him in the crowd. So I guess he was too embarrassed to admit his monstrosity, or how entitled and weird he was acting at the moment. And I honestly hope I never deal with him in this capacity ever again. Wow, Nate sounds incredibly obnoxious. This guy not only needs to stay in his lane, but also he needs to get out of the way. Like, I don't know about you, but if I'm trying to run the multimedia section of some kind of production, regardless of what it is, if I had some idiot hovering over my shoulder saying, "Oh, you're doing it wrong," I would not only kick him out of my space, but also I would lose my mind on him. Like, nobody's going up to Nate while he's playing the bass and being like, "Oh, your speaker's too loud." Like, that would be super obnoxious and very inappropriate. So hopefully Nate learned his place, and the next time he'll choose to stay away from your station and simply let you do your job. An entitled Karen complains to my company after I forced them to follow the rules of the contract that they signed. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work in the security industry, and I'm not going to say where because I fear that someone might recognize the story. The main contract I work is with the local council, and one of the duties I perform is inspecting public halls after they have been rented for a function. And usually it's just private citizens having birthdays, anniversaries, wedding receptions, or something like that. Most of the time there are no problems, and the worst is maybe the space hasn't been cleaned properly, but that's not a problem for me. I just call the cleaning company the council has a contract with, and they send somebody out, hopefully before the place gets used again. The fee comes off the deposit paid for the hall, so it's no skin off of my nose. On a good day, these inspections take maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and also everybody has already left or is about to leave, and I can just do any little jobs that wouldn't be worth calling in the cleaning crew. Now, another thing that should be noted is the terms and conditions to which everyone has agreed to before being allowed to use the halls. It is blatantly stated that they have a maximum of 60 minutes after their allotted time has finished that they need to vacate the premises. After After that, they are considered to be trespassing and the police can be called to remove them. The worst thing about all of this is when the people hiring the space go over time. I get paid by the job, not the hour. So a booking running long means I'm waiting for them to finish while not getting paid. And it's always the same excuse. Oh, we lost track of time, sorry. But funny enough, it always seems to be the people who are well off who run long. They seem to think they can just throw money at the problem and it will just go away. Take this past weekend, for example. The booking was an 18th birthday party and it was scheduled to finish surprisingly early for a weekend night. I arrived the stipulated 10 minutes before the booking is supposed to be finished, just to find that the cleaning has only just begun. Now, to be clear, doing a good job requires at least 45 minutes, and these people had so much stuff that it took them at least that long to get their personal stuff out of the building, let alone even making a start on the cleaning. Knowing all this, I go in and I speak to the people who hired the hall, that being the parents of the birthday girl. I know from experience they wouldn't be able to get everything done in time, and I politely suggested they focus on clearing out their own belongings so I could just call the cleaners in. But unfortunately, I wouldn't be here if they listened, now would I? Because no, they insisted that everything will be fine. They said they'll get everything clean and just pay whatever extra fee the council will charge them for the extra time. However long it took them to clean, they would pay for the time, regardless of the fact that they are in breach of the contract they agreed to when they signed it. No matter how I explained they would not be able to finish everything, they insisted on using the full hour they weren't really entitled to get everything done. Now, to clarify, they were supposed to have everything packed up and cleaned, and it all had to be out by the end of their booking, meaning that extra hour was going to cost them big. Needless to say, with 15 minutes to go, they have only just finished cleaning out their gear, having stopped for about 10 minutes or so to take group photos in the process. So I tell them they have run out of time. They need to get all their gear out so I can call in the cleaners, as there was still a lot to be done. Now, at the time, they seemed accepting of everything, though the mother made a point of telling me that she would be calling first thing Monday to talk to the bookings team. In retrospect, this was her threatening to go to my manager, even though I myself am not a council employee. They ended up clearing out just before the hour expired, and I was finally able to begin the inspection. Oh, and the real kicker here was that they scheduled the caterers to pick up their gear 45 minutes after the scheduled end of their booking. I had all but forgotten about the issue until this morning when I received a call from the council officer who is the liaison between the council and the company I work for. It turns out the mother was true to her word and had actually filed a complaint about the fact that I forced them to adhere to the conditions that they agreed to. Thankfully, the liaison knows me and my work, and once I explained the situation, he agreed I was simply following council protocol. I have no idea how my boss is going to react, as the company only recently took over the contract and they don't know me as well. But hopefully things work out in my favor, because this lady and her family were incredibly entitled. Yeah, it is super obnoxious when people act like this, especially when you're just trying to enforce the rules and they're gonna sit there and be like, fine, I'll follow the rules, but I'm gonna get you in trouble in the process. So honestly, with all things considered, I really hope you don't get in trouble for this. That would be the dumbest reasoning on planet Earth, and I just think that would reflect really badly on your employer, because quite literally, you were just doing your job, and if anything, the fault falls on this family and definitely not with you. Would I be the jerk if I come back to a restaurant just to complain to a manager about a situation that happened 24 hours prior? Because right now, I feel very sad and very humiliated, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I ate at this supposed Italian restaurant Saturday night, and trust me, you'll understand in a minute why I'm describing it that way, because I wasn't craving typical Italian food, and this was just nearby and I was just kind of hungry. When I got there, I ordered a chicken cordon bleu, and this is a meal I've eaten 100 times on different places, and I know very well how it's supposed to look and taste. Now, I've been to this place before, but more for beverages. I've never really had a meal from them until now. So they give it to me, and I was surprised by the first unfamiliar thing. The chicken was covered with an odd-looking mushroom sauce and onions. It wasn't made properly, and the whole thing just tasted awful. The accompaniment wasn't okay either. The vegetables were not cooked or cleaned properly. The rice came with a cinnamon and dry grape seasoning that not only has nothing to do with the recipe, but only tastes so bad. I was so unsatisfied with the overall dinner, and it wasn't cheap, so I couldn't just let it go. I told the waitress if she could please just change my plate, but she said to me, well, what does changing mean? So I told her I want to exchange it with something else. She then asked me why, and I kindly explained it to her. She then says that they cannot replace a plate unless it has a sour taste. So I tell her that mine is inedible at this point. She then tells me that I should have asked her what they put in it, but I say to her that everybody knows what that specific meal is made of. We exchanged a bit, and she kept interrupting me and refusing to properly listen to me or even hold accountability of her own saying bangs. I then say, okay, can you please just call your manager? And she says yes. Now I waited for a good while, and she and the cashier were chatting and basically free. And from time to time, they would look at me and just start laughing. Eventually, I got done with it, and I decided to stand up and go to them. Once the girl noticed me, she said to me, I was just going to call him for you, and you came by. And she only said that to try and make herself look less guilty for making me wait that long. And the person that she introduced me to was a cashier and not a manager. And I knew for a fact she wasn't about to call anybody. So I said what I had to say to this guy, and he didn't even respond. Meanwhile, another person comes along who I'm assuming was a chef or something like that, and they said to each other, oh, here's the one who will know what to say to her. And I initiated the conversation all over again. And this guy wasn't any more professional. He didn't give any solution or explanation, and instead of responding in a mature way, he attacked the fact that I said the food was bad and tried to guilt trip me into believing it's forbidden to describe food like that. Now, the entire time I was smiling and trying to be professional, but the act of me smiling and saying friendly things to the waitress only made the whole thing worse, since they both took my kindness for a weakness and they just treated me like a fool. I tell him that I didn't lack respect towards him nor the food, and that I simply expressed my lack of satisfaction about this situation, but this guy just kept blabbering. In a nutshell, I basically told him in the end if he had any solution or anything to suggest, but he just said no in a mocking way and then turned his back and returned inside. The whole staff were then staring at me and mocking me after I paid, and I just said out loud, it feels good to know what restaurant I'll never step foot in ever again. After that, I felt so bad about it that I started to cry back home. I didn't deserve this kind of humiliation. Now, I'm someone who is very sensitive, and the vast majority of the words that I should have said didn't come to my mind in the heat of the moment. Now that I'm much less stressed about it, I plan to go there and ask for an apology, but from the actual manager and not from anyone else. They already tried to fool me, and I don't want that to happen again. And of course, I'm never eating there ever again. So would I be the jerk if I did this? And what can I do to feel better about this and less guilty for not responding properly and defending myself? I later checked online if this wasn't just a singular incident, and many comments online confirmed that they had a nightmare dealing with this specific restaurant. What should I do? First of all, I'm so sorry that they treated you that way, but also now's your time to get back at them. For starters, you would not be the jerk for complaining because the way they treated you was completely out of line. Like, that is unacceptable to the highest degree, and I just think it's the right thing for you to do to complain in this scenario. Like, your server didn't do the job right at all. In fact, she didn't even put any effort into doing her job. I mean, any server would happily try to exchange the plate for something else, especially if the customer knows right off the bat that the meal sucks. It would have been nothing for that server to switch that out and be like, oh, I'm so sorry the food sucks, let me get you something else. But instead, she and her coworkers just made fun of you the entire time. That is not fair, and in my opinion, you absolutely should complain, because this kind of humiliating treatment should not go unpunished. My entitled manager tries to force my friend to use all his vacation time as some kind of power play to show how good of a manager he really is. And I've honestly never been more frustrated with anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so a new manager was hired for our team, and quickly he wanted to impose his way of doing things, namely having daily stand-up meetings, people having lunch at different times, as well as several other unpopular things. So needless to say, he did not start off well with most people in our team. Then he started going after people who had accumulated annual leave. And for reference, in Australia, we get 20 days annual leave per year. Now, I had none left, so it was no problem for me, but this friend of mine had been working there for nearly 8 years and never took a day off, meaning that he had months worth of annual leave. This manager wanted to make an example of him and ordered him to plan out vacations or even to sell back to the company some of that time, which is perfectly legal but with tons of conditions. My friend didn't want to take any time off, but was being pressured constantly by our manager, and this was every day at our stand-up meetings. The first item would always be pending annual leave and would just fixate on my friend. One day, my friend just had enough of this guy and gave him two options. He told him he wanted to go for extended holidays back to his country and he wanted to take it all at once, or he's going to sell the whole thing back to the company. Well, the manager accepted the first option, only to come back the next day after checking with his manager to say that wasn't possible, as he would have to go for nearly 6 months and we had plenty of projects in the pipeline. He then said he'll have to sell the entire thing back to the company. But then he came back the next day after checking with HR, and one of the conditions says that you can only sell a maximum of 20 days. So this is where his malicious compliance came into play. From that day onwards, every morning my friend started emailing our manager while also sending this to HR and the head of the department, asking him for an update on his annual leave arrangements, stating he had given him the option he was looking for and was waiting for his response. He would also bring it up and push for an answer every day at our stand-up meetings. And while he never got a reply from our manager, weeks later, he did get a reply from the head of our department, indicating that they will review other options and let him know, but they never did. Well, the following year, my friend had his first daughter and ended up taking an extended leave for about 3 months. Also, the pushy manager eventually resigned as he never felt comfortable in the team and found another job somewhere else. And honestly, all I can say is good riddance, because that guy was an absolute nightmare to deal with. How ignorant and stupid can somebody be where they would not only try to deny somebody's accumulated time off, but also try to shortchange them when they try to sell it back to the company? Like, that is insane. That would make me so frustrated and angry, especially if I worked there. And the way this manager came into this new job is just so annoying. And it's unfortunately something that's pretty typical of new managers. They walk in headstrong and try to change everything, instead of trying to get the pulse of the room and figure out, okay, what really does need to be changed. Like, this guy was trying to make an example out of somebody, but he's the one that ended up quitting at the end of the day. So it kind of makes sense why he didn't feel comfortable with the team. He literally made himself a villain right off the bat. So good for your friend for stepping up and not taking any of this guy's garbage, because the way he was acting was completely unacceptable. My entitled parents don't like my boyfriend simply because he isn't rich, and they've even gone as far as saying that I'm going to be setting myself up for a life of financial struggle unless I dump him and move on. And I'm now questioning everything about my life, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 31-year-old female, and I've been dating my 28-year-old boyfriend for 4 years, and we are going to be moving in together in 2 weeks. I am really excited, as I've never taken this step before in a relationship, and that's because I've lived alone since I was 24. I have grown up very privileged, and I'm very grateful for everything my parents have provided me. But on the other hand, my boyfriend has grown up in a lower income household. He has a full-time job managing a local coffee shop. He pays his bills and has never asked me once for money. He has attempted secondary school, but he hasn't been successful, and he knows that his current gig is not a forever thing. On the other hand, I am highly ambitious. I'm a manager at a hospital with a pension plan and all the adult things that come along with it. I'm also a waitress during the weekends to earn some extra money. On top of that, I dog sit and cat sit, as well as dog walk for the doctors I work with, as I am much cheaper than any kennel they could find, and I'm a huge animal lover. With all this extra income, I bought a piece of land in cash last year. It's been almost 5 years of doing the 2-job thing, and I've reached a level of burnout that I've never experienced before. I work nearly 7 days a week, and I've been thinking about quitting my part-time job as my boyfriend is moving in and he will be paying half the bills. I really want to get some better work-life balance because my mental health is not good. I recently confided in my mom about the burnout I'm experiencing, and it was actually on my birthday last week, and I showed up to my family birthday party dinner in tears. I had to reschedule my own birthday party because I was called into the restaurant, and I don't really get to see my friends all that much, so I was really looking forward to it. I told my mom I don't really want my second job anymore, as I no longer need that extra income to afford my car, my rent, or my bills, and that I've given up on home ownership in the near future, at least on my own. Well, it was then that she made some really nasty comments that have honestly completely blown me away. She said to me, "You better get used to a life of financial struggle if you want to stay with him." And she was saying all these awful things in that regard, even though I never brought my boyfriend up once. Keep in mind, I was already pretty upset, and I thought that it was so inappropriate that I almost walked out. I've always wanted validation from my parents, and this has very much bothered me over the years. And I've even been going to therapy about my burnout for the last month using the employee assistance program at my work. But therapy is now turning into how much pressure I put on myself to do it all, and this is due to how I was raised. My boyfriend is fully aware of their opinions of him, and still he sticks around and supports me. His unconditional love means a lot to me, as my parents' love is very much conditional. He has been my rock during this mental health struggle, and it's upsetting that I don't receive the same support from my parents. It's almost like they're disappointed that I can't handle it. And now I'm not sure how to move forward with my parents, because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, your parents are super toxic. First of all, you came to your mom looking for like, I don't know, motherly advice, and she's like, "Oh yeah, your job sucks. I totally understand. By the way, your boyfriend's awful and you should leave him." It's like, whoa, wait a second, what are we doing? Why on earth would you bring him up? He has nothing to do with any of this. Like, that is just completely out of left field. So for her to say that out of nowhere is just completely insane to me. But when it comes to the burnout, I can kind of understand why you're burned out, because you literally work a full-time job and then you're a waitress on the weekends. And like, I could maybe do that for a few years, but after 5 years of that, I would probably lose my mind. So honestly, Honestly, when it comes to your parents, I think it might be time to find someone else that you can confide in, because your mom very clearly has some negative opinions about your boyfriend, and I personally think that is completely unfair. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for not wanting my ex-wife back after she's been texting me and calling me non-stop, practically begging me to let her back into my life? Because right now, I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I was married for nearly 5 years to my now ex. I have 2 boys who are teenagers, and she did not have any children. Now, there is an 8-year age gap, and yes, I know it's probably too much, and probably has a huge bearing on the situation. And she also wanted children between us, and I wanted that as well. But here's where the real reason that I'm here comes into play. A couple years ago, my wife left me for another man, and I have absolutely no idea. I walked in from work, and she told me that she was leaving, and literally went straight to the house. I asked to meet up with her to talk, but she declined. I mentioned marriage counseling, and she said that counseling is dumb and doesn't work. I tried everything to get the madness to stop, but she was bent on staying with him, and this absolutely broke me. Never have I been so hurt in all my life. I poured everything into her, and I just get kicked in the teeth. So I concede to her request, and the divorce goes through, and I start my healing process. More than a year passes, and I get a text message from her saying that she wants to meet up and talk and see if we can work things out. She says she made a mistake, but I reminded her that I gave her so many chances to come back, but she kept choosing to stay away. After talking for a bit, I find out that she is pregnant, but not with a guy that she left me for. So I said there's just no point. Then a friend of hers tells me that she married the guy that got her pregnant. But you know what? I'm fine with that, and I continue to heal. Before she gives birth and even afterwards, she calls me and texts me. And again, she's asking to talk and see if we can try to get back together. But I tell her that I cannot be a part of something just to replay what happened to me again. But she says it's not like that. Well, she keeps trying to guilt me into coming back, saying that I don't love her and that I never loved her. And she also accuses me of not forgiving her. But I feel like I can forgive someone, but not have to have that person back in my life. I will always love her. We were married, and you can't just get rid of that feeling. But I am not in love with her. I feel I made the right decision, and it seems to me that she is the same as she ever was. Am I thinking about this correctly? What should I do? Yes, you are definitely thinking about this correctly, because the way she's acting is insane. For starters, the fact that she's trying to guilt trip you into coming back and saying things like, oh, you don't love me, you never love me, you're just not gonna forgive me, are you? It's like, what are you talking about? You're the one that walked out on the original poster. Like, he's left standing there being like, wait a second, why are you leaving me? And then she's gonna turn around and be like, wow, if you don't let me back in your life, you've clearly not forgiven me. And if I was in your shoes, I would just respond and be like, yeah, you're right, I don't forgive you. And also, no, I don't love you anymore. Someone like this, in my opinion, is clearly grasping at smoke. They realized that they screwed up their life, and they missed out on the one good thing they had going on, namely the original poster. So in my opinion, I think it's time to block this lady and move on with your life. At least that's what I would do. She's clearly trying to weasel her way back into your life, but like seriously, why would you want that back? She's already broken your heart once. Why let her do it a second time? Because her behavior, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate, and there's absolutely no reason why you should put yourself through that ever again. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting to leave my family and move on with my life after the way they've treated me throughout my entire childhood? Here's what happened. I'm 26 years old and I have degrees in engineering and an MBA. My parents married late and had difficulty having children, so they adopted my cousin, who became my stepsister. I remember being constantly criticized, called ugly, and compared unfavorably to others, which made me feel very inadequate. My father used fear and false pride to manipulate me. Despite this, I tried to brag about him to my friends. My stepsister and I never got along, and I struggled a lot with anxiety and always needed approval. When I tried to talk about their mistakes, my stepsister and mother would use shame to silence me. They labeled me as a troublemaker, which made me very angry and very sad. School was also tough, because I had to do well to protect my family's reputation, and even though I was good at music, they always criticized me. Over time, I realized I hadn't pursued any of my dreams. My father made me choose a career that was easy for him, but not what I wanted. Even though I studied hard, I failed subjects that I just didn't care about. I felt overwhelmed and blamed all the time. I tried to help out by fixing and cleaning their cars, but I couldn't afford to fix the big problems, like a broken windshield wiper or maybe some dents. While my friends got new bikes and cars from their parents, I had to make do with an old car and a scooter, even though I felt like I deserved so much much better. When I tried to help my stepsister stay away from bad relationships, she and my mother made fun of me instead. My mother used my stepsister to control my father, who drinks way too much and doesn't do his part around the house. And right now, with all things considered, I just feel so trapped. My father uses money to control me and threatens to kick me out if I don't do what he wants. My mother doesn't say anything about his drinking problem and acts completely unpredictably. Sometimes she's nice, and other times she's irritated and just ignores me. They both had good jobs in the government, and I just think that I should have my own house by now. They don't understand the job market and inflation in India, and they don't listen when I try to explain. They just talk over me with their own ideas. My self-esteem is getting worse. People notice that I've lost weight and I look tired, so I'm honestly wondering, should I quietly plan to leave, or would that be a selfish thing for me to do? I'm worried that I might lose control of my emotions because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Honestly, I don't think it would be a bad idea to get out of that house because it sounds like your mom and your dad are just not really nice people at all. They're super controlling and they're not allowing you to live your own life. And this isn't a situation where you don't have like some way of making money and living on your own. Like you quite literally have everything laid out in front of you where you really could have your own life and your own house that you can live in. But for some reason, your parents are holding you back and like keeping you down. And that is really weird in my opinion, and I just don't think you deserve that. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be trying to move out because the way they're treating you is really mean and in my opinion, incredibly unacceptable. My entitled narcissistic mother has been awful to me my entire life. And after dealing with her for so long, I'm seriously at my breaking point because right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I'm living with my parents in a city with a high cost of living and very bad housing situation. It is a small 2-bedroom apartment with 1 den, and my dad generously gave me the bedroom while my mom took over the master bedroom. And this story is all about my mom. Now, I won't get into the bag of spiky worms that was growing up with her as a mom, but I'll mention some things to give you an idea of who she is. When I was 7, I lived in a big house, and I always felt alone because my mom would take long naps in her bedroom. She was likely depressed, but after watching TV for hours, I would jump in bed and nap with her looking for some kind of affection. Well, this is one of my earliest memories. Most of the time, she would halfway wake up, realize that it is me, and then proceed to tell me that she didn't want me and how sorry she was that I was even born. And throughout my life, she would escalate to screaming and guilt-tripping over every little thing. For example, she lost her phone pretty much every day when I was in high school, and after looking around the couches, she would dramatically sigh and mumble to herself until I asked her what was wrong. She would then ask me to help her look for her phone, and I usually would. But if I ever said no, like if I was doing maybe like homework or doing laundry, she would start complaining about how I'm a bad daughter who never helps her and is always selfish. Then she'll say, "Fine, I'll never help you out with anything if you need it." And this is all over a misplaced phone. Not to mention that asking her to do anything, including cleaning up her own spills or candy wrappers, was like pulling donkeys into a ditch. She often makes herself out to be a better person than she actually is. And since she has a shrill voice and screamed nearly every day of my childhood, I now absolutely detest loud noises. Perhaps more relevant is her relationship to my dad. According to her, my dad cheated on her before I was born with a dirty woman, and she wanted to divorce him but stayed for my brother and me, which is complete BS because she probably just enjoyed spending his money in comfort. She often bragged about how she used to date doctors and lawyers, especially when we went through some financial trouble a few years back, and how she could be living better than she does now. I have a feeling that she stayed with him because he is somewhat of a pushover, who she verbally and sometimes physically hurts. And at this point, it's too late for a fresh start. She's the type to constantly ask him to buy sweets for her, complain about her colleagues, and get upset if my dad doesn't understand the occupational jargon that she uses, or even that he can't even read her mind. If she does her own laundry, she can leave her clothes in the washer for hours on end before he comes home and reminds her, but then she would tell him to do it for her. Now, I was often the one who had to do it for her because I also need to do my own laundry, and she would say stuff like, "Why won't you help your mom out this once?" But you know what? With all things considered, I just stopped talking to her about a year ago. She has always had an explosive temper, a persecution complex, and narcissistic tendencies, and I'm still trying to deal with my own personality problems that have all come up after being raised to not speak up for myself and to deal with conflict very poorly. But I've been doing what I can to pretend like she doesn't exist. Now, we've moved around a lot, at least 8 times in my life, and almost every house we would have a period of dealing with ants. In our last place, we were fine. That is, until she left out a cup of soda or juice, and the ants just came in overnight. It seemed like I was the only one who cared there were ants crawling around the dining table, and eventually it was all over our bathroom. bathrooms, which continued for several months. In our current apartment, we had been ant-free for 10 months, which I'd been pleased by, but today I was doing my laundry and I noticed a line of ants coming out of my mom's room, and I honestly feel so frustrated. I know her room is pretty filthy just from seeing her bring all of her food. From her dinner to Indian food to cookies, it all came down to the fact that she had very poor hygiene. But now she is making it everyone else's problem because we have ants on the loose and they may wander into my bedroom next. I feel like she should have prevented this issue by doing the responsible thing and literally just cleaning up after herself. It annoys me all the more because I had been doing good at keeping bugs at bay, but now she will just yell at us if we get mad at her or even tell her to just clean up. She'll probably just give a disinterested, "Oh, okay," especially when my dad mentions the ants, and then expect us to do something about it, which we will do something about it. But still, her attitude just never fails to irritate me. So I'm honestly so frustrated, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Yeah, your mom does not sound like a good person, and I can completely understand why you would feel frustrated living with this lady. Like, just imagine dealing with that on a daily basis. Here you are trying to just live your life, and she's sitting there and being like, "Oh my god, how on earth can all of this be so bad?" So truly, I don't blame you for being upset, and I know if I was in your shoes, I definitely would be trying to move out as soon as possible. An entitled couple always comes into our restaurant and then seats themselves immediately upon arrival, messing up our seating chart and making our lives incredibly difficult. Here's what happened. Okay, so we have this entitled old couple that comes into our restaurant every few weeks. They're always rude to the staff, they ignore us, and they seat themselves wherever they feel like. And on top of that, they complain about the music volume and the temperature of the restaurant. We are a full-service, moderately upscale establishment that is usually booked at least 75% full on a slow night. Our floor plan is painstakingly planned, and these people come in and screw it up week after week. One night, we saw that they had a 4 p.m. reservation right when we opened, and the entire front house decided to disarm them with kindness and even give them a nice table. We saw them pull up, and we all stood at the host stand ready to greet them and to seat them at the table. And this was including the chef and the owner. One of the servers gets the door for them and welcomes them in, and lets them know to go see me at the host stand and she will seat you. Well, instead, these people walked right by all of us standing there and hightailed it to the table of their choosing in the other room. We all looked at each other dumbfounded, but somewhat not surprised. Well, I decided I was not going to follow them with the menus, and everyone agreed with my stance. Finally, after some time, the husband comes to the host stand when nobody had approached them for several minutes. Having enough of these people, I respond by saying, "Typically, when you come in to eat at a restaurant, you check in with the host who seats you." Well, this guy says nothing and sits back down as I place the menus on the table. Fast forward to a few weeks later, and they come in on a busy Saturday night. The staff sees them coming up the walk, and we all jump in and cut them off. We say to them, "Hi, how are you doing today? Follow me this way." And they have no choice but to comply. While I settle them into the table, a woman who's with them asks me, "Well, why can't we have a window?" But I simply say, "I'm sorry, but this is all we have available at this time." And then I go on my merry way. Fast forward to today, and the entitled husband leaves a review that claims the hostess needs some polishing, and that they were scolded by me after being told to seat themselves, among other complete lies. They also wanted some longer explanation of why the window table was not available. It's clear that these people have never worked in a restaurant a day in their lives, and I was not about to go into great detail about how seating charts work. The restaurant went through somewhat of a big transition over the last few years, where we changed the menu and the vibe to try and get these kind of people to go somewhere else. But as you can see, it didn't work on everyone, because these people have been the bane of my existence for far too long. Okay, this is so annoying to deal with. If I worked at this restaurant, and these customers were allowed to just run amok and do whatever they wanted, I think I would absolutely lose my mind. Like, this is straight up a management issue. Management is not doing anything to try and reinforce their rules, and they're bending to these stupid people simply because they're regulars. Like, that is not how it should work at all. A simple conversation could probably fix all of this right away, because at the end of the day, this entitled couple are literally guests at your restaurant. So for them to act as if they can do whatever they want and just completely mess up the seating chart, which I totally understand by the way, is completely unacceptable and is something that definitely should never be happening. An entitled restaurant owner interrupts our performance to try and make some awful remarks about me, but thankfully I had my teacher by my side as he humiliated this owner in a way that I'm sure he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I was in a traditional kung fu school for 9 years, and my teacher was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school, there are certain etiquettes you have to follow out of both respects for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Now, keep in mind, we were not just teaching students here. We fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers and sisters. One of the rules was that men wore their sashes on the right side, while women wore their sashes on the left. Now, for context, I am a trans male, and my teacher was one of the few people who knew about this. Also, I present very androgynous. My teacher and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school, and we both agreed that neither of us really cared about how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit, and it was honestly a very friendly conversation. At my school, we did a traditional performance every year for Chinese New Year called a Lion's Head Dance. If you look it up online, it's both intriguing and hilarious to watch because it's essentially two people underneath a large, fluffy, papier-mâché lion. We would do this for restaurants, schools, and event centers. We even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is the head of the lion, while the other operates the tail. And we work together to cleanse the space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment, and so that we can scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funniest performances I'd ever done. We have drums and dancing and firecrackers. I mean, we have the whole deal. I was almost always in a line with my teacher because we made a surprisingly good team. One year, we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing, and when we get there, we set up and lay out the equipment and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was with one lion, with me in the tail and my teacher in the head. As we're talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my teacher and I with the most disappointed look on his face. My teacher asked if everything's alright, and this guy just started in on my teacher through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my teacher, while very confused, said that I was operating the tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman shouldn't be in the performance and should never be in the lion. Now, my teacher, with a deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, "We don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student and I am their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school." The owner kept on going off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how I shouldn't even be in the show because I was female. My teacher then looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin on his face, and said, "Okay, no problem." He then turned to me and grabbed my sash, twisted it to my right side, bowed, and then addressed me in Chinese as younger brother. And he did this all before turning back to the owner. This guy had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took everything in me to not just bust up laughing. The owner huffed and told us to just do the show and then stormed off. And just as a little cherry on the top of this interaction, I went to put on the tail of the costume, and my teacher stopped me and motioned for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got to lead the show that night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he didn't get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my teacher, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students. And at the end of that night, thankfully the owner didn't say a word. Okay, I think the biggest thing that came out of this for me is the fact that your teacher is really supportive. They had your back pretty much in the face of some weird animosity, and he put that guy in his place in a way he definitely deserved. So good for the both of you for having such good teamwork, and for you to have somebody on your side that truly cares about you. An entitled jerk screams at me through the bathroom stall, furious with me that I took a bathroom break from my job instead of providing customer service for him exactly when he needed it. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm working overnight at a DoubleTree Inn last night, and by 1:30 in the morning, there was one reservation left to check in. Thinking they probably weren't going to show up, I decided that this was a good time for a bathroom break. So I put up the "Be Back Soon" sign, and I head off to the men's restroom. Now, I'll spare you the details, but as I was halfway through, someone literally walked into the men's restroom and then started screaming, "I need to check in. Is anybody here?" For a moment, I was too surprised to properly answer, but my customer service mask went on quick enough for me to respond. I said to them, "I'll be glad to help you once I'm finished. Please just wait at the desk and I'll be there soon to help you out." Well, that's when this entitled jerk marched up to my stall door. "You're supposed to be at the desk. I need to check in right now. I've been driving for 12 hours. Now, in response, I just continued my business. Because you know what? I have no work remorse. And this guy is probably the most inconsiderate person I've ever heard of in my life. I then finally say, "I'll be glad to help you once I'm finished, sir. Please wait at the desk and I'll throw in a free breakfast for your trouble." He backs up from the stall door but doesn't leave the men's restroom as I literally finish my business and get my pants on. I exit the stall and there he is. Some 90-year-old white guy wearing khaki shorts with a polo shirt and grass-stained white sneakers. Just skin and bones and a deranged sense of entitlement. While While I walk to the sink so I can wash up, he continues his tirade.
When I was your age, people stayed at their stations. They did their jobs. They weren't hiding out in the bathroom. Why weren't you there? Why wasn't anyone there?
Ignoring him, I wash up, dry off, and I exit. I then walk to the front desk with this idiot almost jogging to keep up with me. As I make it back to the desk, he's gasping for air as I try to do the usual check-in routine. I get his ID, his credit card, and his room preferences. He then screams at me,
I want a room on the top floor overlooking the river.
But I just look at him and I say, I'm sorry, sir. All we have are rooms on the second floor facing the parking lot. You're all checked in. Here's your room keys. He then took his luggage cart and he went upstairs. And I thought that was the end of it, but apparently my general manager just texted me about this. It's almost 11 a.m. and he wanted an email report about the interaction, because apparently this entitled old jerk literally wrote a bad review about our location 2 days before he was supposed to check out. And I'm honestly still blown away by this interaction because this guy was completely out of line. Okay, personally, I can deal with a lot of customer interactions, but the second anybody tries to find me in the bathroom to yell at me for not doing my job, that is when the gloves are off. That is such an inappropriate thing to do to somebody, it is not even funny. Can you imagine being so entitled that you scream at somebody for going to the bathroom? And I'm willing to bet that the original poster was not gone that long. They literally stepped away for just a second so they could take care of their business. Meanwhile, he's got this entitled jerk breathing down his neck the entire time. So honestly, I think you handled this way better than I would have handled it, because this guy's behavior absolutely deserved to be corrected. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Would I be the jerk if I filled in a man-made pond on my property that has been driving me crazy ever since I found out that I owned it? Because right now, my neighbors are angry with me for wanting to get rid of this pond, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So for the past several years, I've owned a property in a semi-rural area. It is part of an HOA with only 12 houses over 1,000 acres, so we don't get much in each other's way. There is a common area that butts against my property, and on it there is a pond that's fed via an irrigation headgate on a creek on my property, as well as a cut that runs from it through my property. Well, I've come to discover that this pond is a real pain. Our previous neighbor used to maintain it without making a fuss, but he recently passed away. So dealing with it fell to me as the neighbor most affected by it, and it is an absolute pain. People trespass to go fishing or have their dogs swim in it. People have also come from outside to ice skate on it, which is totally not safe. It has silting problems, the headgate needs to be dug out every spring, sometimes multiple times, the cut clogs up and it has to be cleared. Then a beaver took up residence and kept blocking the outflow culvert, which then caused flooding on a neighboring farmer's land. And he was rightfully pissed off, and I got the blunt end of it. I was clearing out beaver blockages several days a week, and nobody else in the HOA would help. I did some research, and I discovered that the water right from the headgate belongs to me alone and not the association. There was no easement for the irrigation cut, and as a cherry on the sundae, the pond is actually on my property and not common area. And I even had a survey done just to be sure. I also discovered it really wasn't a pond. It was a hole dug up to provide fill for our road, and the original developer just routed irrigation into the hole and said, oh, okay, this is a pond. So this kind of explains why it's always such a mess. A landowner a mile away is now digging out a proper pond, and he has to pay a ton to dispose of the fill even though it is clean. So I asked if it would help if he could just put some of the fill in our pond, and he offered to pay for the privilege. I have closed the headgate and started draining the pond, and now some members of the HOA have been yelling at me that they like the pond, but just to look at as they drive out the main road and not to maintain it. So I said, okay, if you like it, just pay up $10,000 a year for someone else to deal with this nonsense. Well, as you can probably imagine, they refused. So I said, in that case, the pond is getting filled in, and it's going to be planted with native grass, and I'm going to be using the money from taking the fill. They're now calling me a selfish jerk and saying that I shouldn't be doing this. So I really need to know, would I be the jerk if I filled in this man-made pond? What should I do? It is so comical to me that the HOA is like, no, don't get rid of it, we like to look at it. But as soon as you ask for any kind of help, whether physically or monetarily, they suddenly take a step back and they're like, oh no, I don't actually want to help. I just want to look at it from the road when I drive by. And that is seriously so obnoxious, especially because this is on your property. People are cutting through your yard just to go there and go ice skating on it, or have their dog swim in it. Just from the sounds of it, that does not sound like a clean body of water. So I don't blame you for wanting to fill this in, because from the sounds of it, it doesn't seem like the HOA is going to help you out in the slightest. slightest. Am I the jerk for snapping at my husband in front of his family after he tried to take credit for me learning how to drive? Because in reality, he made this process so much harder than it needed to be. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so for my entire life, I've had a lot of anxiety when it comes to driving. It has never been too much of a problem, as I live in a city and I can walk wherever I need to go. I've also been married to my husband, who we will call Stan, for 3 years now, and we've been together for 6 years. Throughout our relationship, he has tried to help me learn how to drive. But the problem is that Stan is not a very good teacher, and he gets very impatient and angry every time we try. And for reference, I'm 30 years old. We go to the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse sometimes, and it's huge. And if I make one small mistake, for example, if I don't check my mirrors for a long enough time, Stan will yell at me. Now, I would already be nervous at the wheel, but with all the yelling, it would cause me to break down and cry. I have a brother who we will call Paul, who I typically hang out with once a week. A few months ago, I was talking to Paul about how I want to learn how to drive. He offered to help teach me when we hang out, and Paul's husband, who we will call Chris, also was willing to help me out, and they actually made me feel so much more at ease behind the wheel. So I thought I was bad at driving, but it turns out I was just anxious. Another factor that made me want to learn, besides feeling like I need to do this, is that Stan has told me that he won't have a child with me until I get my license, which I definitely understand. So 2 weeks ago, on my day off from work, Paul and Chris took me to the DMV and I finally got my license. I also bought a used car a few days ago from money that I've been saving up for years, and I'm just so happy to have had the support of my brother and his husband. Now, I thought Stan would be mad that I did all of this behind his back, and he was somewhat disappointed that I didn't want his help. I love him so much, but honestly, he wasn't the right teacher for me. So anyways, fast forward to Sunday, and Stan and I both had off from work, and he told me that he had a little surprise for me. He took me to his parents' house where they had a celebration for me, which was basically just a little party congratulating me because I learned how to drive. Halfway through, my mother-in-law was giving a speech about how proud she was of me, but also how she was proud of my husband for all the support and lessons he was giving me. Now, when she said this, I could feel the anger rising in my chest. Stan had been telling everyone that he was the one who had been teaching me to drive, so I just finally snapped. I told everyone that anytime Stan tried to teach me how to drive, I always ended up crying because he would yell at me until he was blue in the face, and that the only people who helped me and gave me confidence were Paul and Chris, and that if anything, Stan made things way worse for me, which was the absolute truth. But now, ever since I said that, Stan won't talk to me. My in-laws are on my side, but my two brother-in-laws and a couple of cousins are on Stan's side. I do kind of feel like a jerk, but at the same time, everything I said was true. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. The fact that your husband seriously tried to take credit for something he was only making worse, in my opinion, is super toxic. Like, he has no right to try and stake a claim over your success. Chris and Paul are the only reason you were able to get this done, and Stan was only making it worse by pressuring you and screaming at you. And here's the thing, I don't care who you are or what you're trying to learn. If someone's going to be screaming at you and freaking out on you when you're trying to learn something new, that is not going to help you get things figured out. Like, this is not the military. He's not some drill sergeant, and she's just trying to learn how to drive. So his aggressive impatience is so uncalled for. So honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would have called him out in the exact same way as well, because he's seriously hindered your ability to learn how to drive. And under no circumstances does he ever have the right to take credit for your hard work. My sister and my mother have absolutely zero respect for my privacy, as they are constantly opening my packages as well as barging into my room without knocking. And it's all driving me insane, and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so at this point, this has all been going on for years. For the longest time, I've tried to get my sister and mom to respect my privacy, most notably in regards to not opening my packages and not walking into my room unannounced. Every single time I try and get them to respect these, it turns into them going completely on the defensive, where they'll try to claim that I'm trying to hide something, or that they're just trying to make conversation with me. A favorite of theirs is claiming that I'm being ignorant in the way that I tell them it's private, and that I'm just trying to get a rise out of them by making jokes. Now, for context, I've told them in a joking way a few times that I want privacy, but only because I was hoping they'd listen to me if I did that, since they weren't listening to me when I was being serious. In their eyes, though, they are listening to me, because now, instead of opening my packages, they wait for me to come home from work or whatever and want me to tell them what it is and then show them. And if I say no, I get shouted at and name called. In regards to bursting into my room, I told them to knock, which they now thankfully do. Except what happens now is they either knock, wait for my response, and regardless of the response, they walk in anyways, or they just knock and walk in question without even waiting for me to reply. In fact, earlier today, I got into another argument over this with both of them. I ordered a package for my girlfriend and they asked what it was. Now, to be fair, it said perfume in small writing on the box, so they already knew what it was. And honestly, it wouldn't have bothered me showing it to them, but I've gotten sick of their nosiness, so again, I wouldn't tell them. Well, they decided to name call me, saying awful things to me over and over again. Then, when I tried explaining to them again about my privacy and my packages, and how I want them to respect my privacy, they pretty much refused to acknowledge what I was requesting, and instead suggested to have my packages shipped to a P.O. box if I don't want them being nosy. And honestly, for the last few years, I have felt a sense of entitlement from the two of them, but this just confirms to me that this is exactly the way that they are. Yeah, your mom and sister are being super obnoxious and super nosy too. Like, there's no reason for them to be invading your privacy in this way, and in my opinion, I don't blame you for being upset. Like, if I was in your shoes and I was living in this kind of situation, I would be so frustrated every single day. Because sure, they're not looking in your packages right now, but like, who's to say they couldn't change their mind and start doing that tomorrow? And it's just so crazy to me that they can't just put it to the side and be like, oh, okay, this isn't mine. Like, why are they so obsessed about everything that you're doing? This is all just super inappropriate, and I really don't blame you for being frustrated. Am I the jerk for going to the police immediately once I found out that my parents racked up $60,000 in debt in my name? Here's what happened. Okay, so my parents took out credit cards and loans in my name, and it was fine while they were paying the bills, but they eventually got behind. I don't have a key to the mailbox, so I never saw the bills or anything. I just finished my 3rd year of university, and I was going to move out, and that would require me to get a credit check and all this other stuff. Well, my parents freaked out and then forbid me from moving out. They said it was stupid that I would waste money on moving out when I could save money living at home. Now, they don't like my boyfriend, so I thought that was their issue, but my God, was I completely wrong. Long story short, I'm about $60,000 in debt because of them, and I cannot afford to pay that off. I told them that they needed to clear the debt immediately, and they needed to change the house rules so that my boyfriend could spend the night. They said that they didn't have the money to pay the debt, and that I could not strong-arm them into changing the rules of their house. I called my auntie and I asked her if I could please stay with her for a little bit, and while she did let me stay with her, she also asked a lot of questions. She then showed me dozens of Reddit posts about parents screwing up their kids' future, along with the kids just completely allowing it. So I made the decision to go to the police and report them. And as a result, my parents got arrested and were charged, and they're now very furious with me. I know they didn't spend the money on me, and I don't know what they spent it on, but I honestly don't care. In the end, I feel bad for them, but I'm not letting them mess up my future. So am I the jerk for reporting my parents and getting them in trouble? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, because your parents are completely out of line. They literally opened up credit cards and loans in your name. That is so illegal, it's not even funny. And also, I have to disagree with something you said in the beginning. You said that it was okay for them to do this because they were paying for all the bills. But even then, this is so illegal and not allowed. You can't do that to somebody because this is what can happen. They open up credit cards and rack up $60,000 in debt, and then suddenly you're the one left to deal with all the backlash. So no, of course you're not the jerk. Your mom and dad are completely out of line, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for not taking the blame for unknowingly breaking a mom's rules for her kid when she was having a sleepover? Because right now, this mom is incredibly pissed off at me, and at this point, I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my daughter had a sleepover a couple days ago with 4 of her friends. From what I observed, the girls had a lot of fun together, and they were all very respectful to each other, my husband, and myself. Most of the girls' parents thanked me and my husband for hosting and said positive things, but one texted me a list of all the things that I did wrong. The first thing that upset this mom was the fact that my daughter and her friends went swimming in our backyard pool. When the sleepover invites were sent out via text message, I asked the moms if they were okay with their girls going swimming. All of them said yes, or that's okay with me, except for the complaining mom, who simply liked my text instead of responding. And when she did this, I just assumed this meant yes. I would not have allowed this had the girls not been forced to pass a swimming safety unit, which included a swim test at the end for their PE class. Additionally, my husband completed a lifeguarding course from the Red Cross, and he passed with flying colors. The mom's second issue was the food that they ate, which she deemed to be completely unhealthy. I, however, did not see an issue with this because I think eating junk food at a sleepover is completely fine. The next issue was the movie the girls watched after dinner. Since some of the girls are 14 and others are 15, we told them no rated R movies. But other than that, it was completely up to them. They ended up choosing The Fault in Our Stars, which of course the complainer deemed inappropriate. The The final thing that she was mad about was the fact that the girls didn't actually go to sleep until midnight. Now, as a mom myself, I understand, because I want my daughter to get enough sleep. However, both my husband and I do think that sleepovers are a time when it's okay to stay up late, provided the kids let the parents sleep, which my daughter and her friends absolutely did. Additionally, the girls woke up at 8:30, meaning they got well over 8.5 hours of sleep. I received the complaining mom's texts on the day after the sleepover, and the text said something like this: "Thank you for having my daughter over. It was generous of you to open up your home and graciously host her. However, I feel that many of your decisions were questionable and inappropriate." She then proceeded to list her objections with specific reasons for each one. I then replied by saying, "Please tell your daughter thanks for coming. She was a pleasure to host, and I do understand your concerns. But considering that you never communicated your expectations or rules, I don't think it's fair to place the blame on me. If we ever do things like this in the future, please make sure to let me know of any restrictions ahead of time. Thank you and have a lovely weekend." She then responded angrily that it was my fault, and when I texted her to say sorry, she didn't respond. So am I the jerk for not taking the blame? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you are definitely not the jerk. This other mom is being a complete moron. She's trying to blame you for something that she never specified. She's literally trying to hold this over your head and be like, wow, this was really inappropriate. But if it really was that big of a deal, then why would you not say something? Why not just speak up and be like, okay, here's a list of things I don't want my daughter doing at your house. And then I'm sure the original poster could have prepared for it in some kind of way. But for her to retroactively be offended at all the things that she's like, oh, I didn't like any of that, despite the fact that what they did really was not that big of a deal, in my opinion, is super toxic and really controlling. So no, you're definitely not at fault here, because the way that mom is acting is incredibly insane. Am I the jerk for kicking my brother out of my wedding after he proposed to his girlfriend during my reception? Because right now, my family is very divided on this, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I recently got married to my wonderful husband. We had a beautiful wedding that we spent a year planning and saving for. It was a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, followed by a reception at a lovely venue. And honestly, everything was going perfectly. That is, until my older brother decided to propose to his girlfriend during our reception. He didn't just propose quietly either. He made a big scene, getting down on one knee right in the middle of the dance floor, stopping the music and drawing everybody's attention. It felt like the whole entire reception shifted from celebrating our marriage to celebrating their engagement. So I was stunned, and I didn't know how to react at first. My husband was visibly upset, and I tried to keep my composure, but as the night went on, I grew increasingly frustrated. So I pulled him aside, and I told him that I thought that what he did was incredibly disrespectful and very selfish. I asked him to leave the reception because I just didn't want any more drama. When I said that, he was shocked and said that I was overreacting, and that it was just a spur-of-the-moment kind of thing. And when I looked over at his girlfriend, she looked incredibly embarrassed. They both eventually left, but now my family is divided. Some of them think I was right to stand up for myself, while others think I overreacted and should have just let it go. My brother has since apologized, but I can't shake the feeling of having my special day overshadowed. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you did anything wrong. Your brother literally proposed during your wedding reception. I don't know about you, but that is the last place you ever want to propose to your girlfriend. This quite literally took away from your big day, and he basically drew all the attention to him and his girlfriend instead of keeping it on you and your husband. And that, in my opinion, is so toxic. And you know what? I think he's completely lying when he's like, oh, this was just spur of the moment. This is not some kind of spur of the moment situation. This is very much premeditated, and it's something he probably planned from the beginning. And that really sucks for you. Seriously, that's just awful. So in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would have kicked him out as well. What he did is completely inappropriate, and anyone trying to justify that as well, in my opinion, is completely in the wrong. My entitled lying sister secretly goes on a trip to Paris despite begging me for money to help her pay rent. And after finding out the truth about her secret vacation, and after realizing that she had scammed me out of money for months on end, I finally exposed her and confronted her for the liar that she is. Here's what happened. Okay, so my sister got laid off about 5 months ago. She's really struggled to find another job ever since, simply because things are really bad in her field, as people are being laid off left and right. She's currently working as a waitress while she looks for a more permanent job, but isn't earning enough to fully cover her rent. I have a pretty well-paying job, and I share rent with my partner, so I offered to help her cover the rent while she looks for another job. She was extremely grateful, and together we agreed on an amount which would allow her to cover rent and also have some money left over for food or travel. It's important to note that her monthly expenses for food, travel, travel and bills were all provided by her. I didn't have any issues or suspect that anything was amiss. She hates working as a waitress, so I'm confident that she is doing everything in her power to find another job. The last time I saw her, she mentioned that she has picked up a few extra shifts recently so that she can afford to get our parents a nice anniversary gift, so I figured she was basically living paycheck to paycheck. Well, fast forward to now, and I've just received word from our cousin that my sister is in Paris. When I expressed confusion, my cousin sent me a bunch of screenshots from my sister's Instagram. My sister must have blocked me and my parents on there because none of us could see any of her posts or stories. I was very confused and then very angry because if she is living paycheck to paycheck, how on earth can she afford to go on a trip to Europe? For context, we live in Australia and plane tickets typically cost upwards of $1,000, and that's not accounting for food, hotels, or anything else. I was so pissed that not only has she gone on an expensive trip, but she has also clearly tried to hide it from me. I ended up sending her a few short messages, basically saying that I knew she was in Europe and that clearly she doesn't need my help paying rent anymore if she can afford a big trip. Well, she called me and was basically in tears, begging me not to cut her off. She said that she is on the trip with her new boyfriend and that he is paying for everything. She then insisted that she still needs the money to cover her rent and that she will have to move if I don't help her. But I basically just told her that it was now her problem and then I hung up the phone, which I will admit was childish of me, but I was still so mad. Now, I don't know much about her new boyfriend, so maybe he's a millionaire or something like that, but the fact that she tried to hide it from me sets off so many alarm bells. I will obviously have a proper discussion with her when she gets back, but for now, I'm going to block her number. Since then, she has reached out to some family members who think that I'm being way too harsh and that I should give her the benefit of the doubt. They all seem to think that I'm going to force her to be out on the streets. So am I the jerk for doing what I did? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. First of all, I don't think you're the jerk at all, but secondly, it really seems like your sister was playing you for a fool. She was clearly lying to you about needing help with rent, or she figured out her money problems much sooner than you realized, and so instead of saying something about it, she's been enjoying the free money that you've been giving her. Like, how unfair is that? You're literally helping her out and she's taking advantage of you. And I'm right there with the original poster. Unless her boyfriend is like some millionaire or something like that, there's no way she didn't help pay for at least a little bit of that trip. And yes, if she can pay for a trip to Paris, then she can absolutely pay for her rent moving forward. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for fighting with my mother's husband after he freaked out on me for not cleaning the house? Because right now, there's a chance that they might get divorced, and I can't help but think that I might have played a role in that moving forward. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old female, and I'm currently living in a shared space with my mom and her husband after running into some medical troubles and no longer being able to afford to live on my own. And before anyone says anything, yes, I am paying rent and my bills to live here. The issue started between me and her husband a few months after I moved in, with him taking every opportunity that he could to talk to himself about how much of a lazy jerk I am and how it must be nice that I'm stuck at home while I'm on medical leave from work, and that I'm faking my chronic illness flare-ups just to get away with doing nothing and generally just complaining about my existence anytime I wasn't in my room. So I started spending all my time in my room unless my mom was home, and only coming out to talk to her when she got back from work or updating her on my medical stuff. Well, apparently her husband has an issue with that as well. He gets mad whenever we talk and just generally acts like a jealous boyfriend, and that I'm trying to steal his girl away as if she isn't my mother. To keep things brief, it's essentially gotten to the point where I can't even leave my room without him starting something or finding issue over it, and finds even more issues in the fact that I don't leave my room because he expects me to play Cinderella and clean up after his messes every day and cook dinner for them every night, despite the fact that I cannot walk or stand for more than 20 minutes at a time, all without experiencing immense pain. And I even have doctor's orders saying that I can't do that, so most of the demands that he makes of me are just absolutely ridiculous, and I only end up hurting myself more or prolonging my injury. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do more when I'm on restrictions of what I can do after suffering a back injury that I've already had to get 3 surgeries for, and I'm literally waiting to get more of. It's already frustrating feeling like a prisoner in my own body and being stuck somewhere I don't even want to be. So this leads to my main point of why I might be the jerk here. I ended up getting into a screaming match with her husband after he came home acting like a toddler. He was slamming doors and cabinets, he was stomping around and throwing things, things, and he was talking loud garbage about me, all because I didn't clean the house after getting home from another round of spine injections to try and manage the swelling that I'm experiencing. A lot of things were said, and my mom came home and they ended up getting into a huge fight that literally went on for 3 more days. And now my mom is saying that she threatened divorce and that she'll lose the house without his job to pay for it, and I just don't know what to do. I will admit that there are some times I can do more to try and help clean, but I've kind of stopped doing it out of spite because he talks garbage regardless if I do it or not. And while I would have no issues cooking for my mom, I have no desire to cook for someone who treats me like garbage, especially for things that I can't control, even if I know my refusal isn't helping the problem. I don't want my mom to suffer because of me. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk, and trust me, you are not the reason they would be getting a divorce. It sounds like her husband is a massive piece of garbage. This guy is freaking out about you, someone who's ill and having back surgery, not cleaning the house and not cooking for him. It's like, what are you talking about? This isn't a vacation for you. You're not sitting around because you want to. You literally are sitting around because you have to. You literally can't even move and get things done. You could barely stand and walk. And this guy wants to be like, oh wow, it must be nice to be off work all the time, as well as him calling you lazy. Like, are you kidding me? Now, I've never had a severe back injury of this kind, but I have definitely pulled a muscle in my back, and that was a miserable experience. So I can only imagine the issues you go through on a daily basis. Like, even just the pulled muscle was like, wow, I can't like breathe properly or even walk properly. This sucks. So for you to have like multiple surgeries and get spinal injections, like that really must be an intense experience. And the fact that he doesn't understand that is insane to me. So no, I don't blame you for a second for standing up for yourself and yelling back at this jerk, because his behavior was absolutely unacceptable and he deserved to be shut down. Am I the jerk for leaving early from my aunt's house after my sister-in-law called me clingy and embarrassed me in front of my family? Here's what happened. So I had been visiting my aunt's place for a wedding, who lives a few hours away from me. She has 2 boys, ages 30 and 27, and the both of them are married to 2 beautiful and intelligent women. I met them only recently, and I have not hung out with them a lot. I always wanted older brothers since I only have an older sister, although I acknowledge that this was not their responsibility. My aunt loves me a lot though, and I asked her if I could stay at their place for a couple days more. At night, both of my cousins were with their wives, and I was helping my aunt with dinner. She asked me to call all of them downstairs, and when I went to the room, I heard my older sister-in-law saying, "Oh my god, when is she leaving? I don't know why she's so clingy. She annoyed us throughout the wedding and meddles in our family so much." And when she said that, my cousins just lightly laughed along. I'm unsure if they found humor in her words or if it was just all awkward laughter. My cousin saw me in the doorway, and it looked like he had seen a ghost. I just said, "Please come downstairs, dinner's ready." He then stopped me and asked if I had heard what she said, and I just gave him a smile and said while holding back tears, I did, but it's okay because she can have her opinion. It's okay if she doesn't like me. I did not take it into consideration that you guys are on a hectic schedule and force myself here. I'll do better, I promise. He apologized to me on her behalf, and she apologized as well, saying she was just stressed out about the busy schedule and packing, even though I'd been doing chores for them all day to not be dead weight. After the dinner, they tried to talk to me, but I just avoided them, and I ended up calling a friend. I talked to him to try and calm myself down because my feelings were really hurt and I felt unwanted. In the morning, I packed my bags early, and I told my aunt I'm gonna visit a friend in the city, then I have a flight late in the evening to go back home as soon as possible for work. My aunt was surprised and asked me to wait until my cousins wake up before I go, but I told her that I had said my goodbyes last night already. After seeing my friend, I just went to the airport a few hours early, and I sat in the lounge until it was time to go. My sister and I have shared GPS locations for safety purposes, and I forgot that she can see me being at the airport a couple days earlier than planned. So I told her everything, and when I got off the flight, I had missed phone calls and text messages from my aunt and my cousins. Apparently, my sister told my mom what went down, and she too was very unhappy. She then called my aunt and asked her about this, and found out that she was unaware of all of it, and that my cousins had just played it cool. So for a long story short, my aunt and uncle are super upset with my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law feels that I made an immature and rash decision and made her look bad in front of the entire family. I could have given them a chance the next day to fix things, but apparently I threw them all under the bus. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. These people clearly let their real feelings out while you weren't around, and you just happen to be there to see exactly how they feel. And that's like really unfortunate. Like once that cat's out of the bag, there's no way you're getting it back in. So in my opinion, I don't blame you for leaving, and I don't think you're the jerk for the way you reacted. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. My parents constantly talk down to me, despite the fact fact that I'm doing everything I can to live a good life. And now, after a recent incident with my sister, I am now being labeled as an ungrateful bad daughter, all because of things that are completely out of my control. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I am super introverted, unlike my very extroverted family. My youngest sister is very close to my dad and plays sports. My middle sister is charismatic but incredibly selfish, and she is constantly being fired from jobs and failing college. On the other hand, I'm a 22-year-old college student with a 3.5 GPA set to graduate in the spring of 2025. I have a full-time job at the university as a teaching assistant and as a program coordinator, and I also have a part-time job to help pay for some of my bills. Despite my efforts and achievements, I've never felt a strong bond with any particular parent. My dad put so much pressure on me to play sports that it became unenjoyable, and my parents are unsupportive of my passions. I have ADHD, so I struggle to focus and notice things, which my parents misinterpret as laziness or thoughtlessness. Recently, I spoke up against my mother for constantly berating me during our calls. She always points out my teenage flaws despite my efforts to change. We live in different states, and they rarely call me first. When I visit, I do my best to help out around the house and endure their criticism without reacting. During my teenage years, I had hormonal outbursts, but I don't do that anymore. When I ask my mom why she always lectures me, I was hoping to start a genuine, healthy conversation, but she just simply couldn't handle it. I had to attend community college because my parents didn't believe I'd make it through a year of college, even though they let my almost dropout sister go straight to a university. I'm currently abroad studying a foreign language with my boyfriend, and I recently found out that my crazy sister, whom I allowed to live with me due to her bad terms with most people, is causing issues again. She posted on her story, forgetting to remove me, that she was smoking the herb in my apartment and blew the smoke into my dog's face. Now, I don't care if she smokes, but I set a ground rule. If you are going to smoke or vape, it had to be outside because I have asthma and it's not good for the dog. And most importantly, we live in a state that doesn't allow that. I confided in my youngest sister about what I saw, and she told my parents. I didn't want to tell them because they take me telling them these things as me bullying my sister and treating me as a villain, but they are also upset with my sister and they are happy to know. I planned to deal with it when I got back, but my youngest sister loves my dog, so she told them. Well, my dad called me and ranted about what he's going to do about my sister since he helps me pay my rent and pays her phone bill. Then he turned it around on me, saying how I'm such a bad daughter because I sometimes talk back and how ungrateful I am for everything I have. I didn't say anything and I just took the verbal smackdown. And this is exactly why I didn't want them to know. It always turns into how I'm also the problem when I didn't do anything. I always thank them for everything and never ask for more. I'm just at a loss of what to think. I don't want to classify my parents as awful, though I do feel worthless and have been feeling this way for a long time. What should I do? First of all, you are not a bad daughter, and I really just cannot stand the fact that your parents have made you feel that way. You are literally about to graduate college with honors. You've worked hard by yourself, by the way, to get all these things out of the way, and you really have tried to be a good kid. So for your dad to be like, wow, you're such a bad daughter, while also simultaneously ignoring the fact that his other daughter is being an idiot, like that is all just so unacceptable, and I just can't believe that they would treat you that way. So no, you're not a bad daughter, and in my opinion, it seems like you're doing everything right. I cost my job nearly $6,000 by maliciously complying to one of the dumbest policies I've ever heard in my life. And considering how awful they treated me, I am seriously happy to have gotten back at these people in the way that I did. Here's what happened. So at my previous job, I worked in a company that was regulated by multiple powerful government agencies. When they asked for something, they want it pronto. And if the delay was too long, they'd rather have us shut down business rather than wait for data, information, or prototypes. So I was given a company phone that I had to take everywhere with me. There were rotating on-call periods, but I'm expected to be available if anything goes wrong. And the phone was an Apple phone. It wasn't a US-based model, and it had 2 different networks, and it included some extra tech with it as well, which basically means I could jump on whichever network was stronger, and maybe even use both at the same time. So all this to say is that it was very good, and it should have been pretty expensive. Now, as a side note, I love nature, and I can and have gone camping, often sometimes in remote places, and I've often gone a few days without seeing another human being. 18 months into the job, there was a new schedule where I got 3 days of being on call and expected to work a regular 8-hour day, having to live within 20 minutes of work, and then 4 days of being off. This worked pretty amazing for me. So as soon as the next on-call team got on and started doing their job, I would be on a plane to get to another national park under my belt, or some other remote state park, or even whatever whatever I had my sights set on. Now, I thought it would be helpful to carry the company phone that I was given, just in the off chance that I might be needed. Because here's the thing, in the year and a half that I've worked there, I was never contacted when not being on call, as we had a strong culture of communications, and the teams knew what they had to know in order to troubleshoot. But nevertheless, I took the company phone along with me. Now, during the trip, the screen got damaged. Not so much that the phone was inoperable, but definitely difficult to use. I got back, went through the forums, and got IT to repair or just give me another one. Some manager high up in the IT chain went off and was going on and on about how expensive those devices were, how difficult it was for them to configure them, and how much harder it was to get them in the US and all this other BS. She then told me that I am not to take the company phone and hardware along with me wherever I go, as it's supposed to go between my residence and the office and nowhere else. And she was pretty explicit about it as well. So I shot off an email later, keeping my manager in the loop and the department head in regards to what she said and basically confirming it. So it was right about then that I decided to maliciously comply. A few weeks later, I decided to take some PTO. Now, the PTO policy was pretty good, and thus I took off for 3 weeks, and I still had over 3 weeks remaining. And on that trip, as per stated by my manager, I did not take any of the company hardware along with me. Well, as you can probably imagine, an all-hands-on-deck situation arose, and my manager was pissed at me not being able to answer the company phone. I mean, it's not like I was in the woods, visiting my very dear cousin who just had twins and a very difficult delivery or anything like that. I literally took care of my cousin while her husband looked after the kids. So my manager had to get me on my phone, and she had to go through some of my work friends for my personal phone, since I was pretty good about not giving out my personal information to people at work. When I answered the phone, my manager was furious. She said to me, "Why aren't you answering the company phone?" I responded by saying, "Well, I'm not at home. I don't have the company phone on me." My manager then said, "Never mind that. Get back online immediately. We have an all-hands-on-deck situation." I responded by saying, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any of the company hardware with me." And when I said that, my manager started swearing on the phone. I further explained that this manager is in IT, and they said I wasn't to take the company hardware along with me wherever I go. Now, this was clearly news to this manager because they were like, "What? When did that happen?" I responded by saying I sent an email stating what she said, and I kept you and our other department head in the loop. My manager then goes through her email, finds it, and then starts swearing again. "You need to come back immediately." But I responded by saying, "Sorry, I can't do that. My cousin is pretty much still out of commission after a very difficult twin pregnancy. I'm literally taking care of her, and I was pretty clear about it before going on PTO. I would not be able to come back even if I wanted to." My manager then cuts off the call and then calls me back in 30. My manager says, "Do you have anyone who has keys to your apartment?" I responded by saying yes. She then said, "Give me their contact. I am going to get you the computer and a screen, as well as all the hardware that you need, shipped right to you before night, and you can get back. We have a serious situation." Now, me knowing that I have a slight upper hand and that I'm striking when the metal's hot, I responded by saying, "Okay, can I get more PTO to compensate this intrusion?" My manager then responded by saying, "Sure, I'll send an email approving this." And by 8 o'clock p.m., I get my company phone, computer, and other hardware shipped directly to me. I also get 2 emails. One email approving the extended PTO for this intrusion, and the second email from my department head stating that the original company policy is still in effect. In fact, a new policy has been put in place for some employees to have their company hardware with them, even when they have PTO, and that anything else said by anyone else was to be disregarded. And the cherry on top was that the IT manager got this email as well. When I returned from my PTO, that IT manager was nowhere to be seen. It turns out that she had been demoted, she couldn't handle that kind of rejection, and then she decided to quit. So this company had spent over $6,000 to ship it on the same day and get this hardware to me as fast as possible. And honestly, with all things considered, that's definitely a mistake they won't be making twice. Yeah, this is one of those situations where people need to stay in their lane and not make some overarching sweeping regulation over something so minor. It's so stupid making some kind of policy like that where you're like, okay, you can't take that phone anywhere besides your job or your home. It's like, seriously, do you have to be that strict? You're seriously gonna make my life more difficult just because of one incident? It's not like the original poster broke the phone on purpose, come on. And the fact that they did this while you were on PTO, and they're like, no, you have to come in, we need you right now. And that they spent $6,000 to get this figured out, in my opinion, is so overboard it's not even funny. That IT manager that made this call is a complete idiot, and they had no business being in that kind of leadership position. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen again because these people clearly do not know what they're doing. And Entitled Karen demands that I I move my campsite at a public beach, claiming that she wanted exactly where I was already setting up. But after I denied this Karen her request and told her that I wasn't gonna move, she then went into a rage, saying that if I don't move, that she was going to destroy my campsite the second I left. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened Saturday. My family and I went on a camping trip at a fairly popular lake. I left early with my cousin to secure a site for everybody, but it got way too packed. We got there early enough that there was plenty of space for everybody there. We start setting up some tents, and this lady comes up to us and tells us that she is saving a spot for her family. We asked her which spot, and she actually gestured towards a whole 30-foot stretch of the beach. We then asked her where her equipment was, and she said it was on the way, to which I said, okay, well, it's a public beach and our stuff is already here, so I don't know what to tell you. And then I just continued setting up our tents. She tried to tell us that it was claimed, but I explained that it's first come, first serve, and that since it's a public beach, she can't decide that a portion of it is gonna be hers. Now, mind you, there was plenty of space all over, yet for some reason, she demands this spot specifically, despite the fact that we're already setting up camp. She continues whining as we continue to set up, and soon her big idiot husband comes up with a grandmother in tow, and she starts catching them up on everything. The husband is annoyed, but he doesn't bother us about it, and just starts to set everything up himself. Meanwhile, the grandma gets all angry. She says to us,
Well, that's fine. I'm going to destroy their camp as soon as they leave.
I then asked her and I said, did you actually threaten to destroy my property? To which she proudly said yes. I then said, ma'am, that's actionable. And she was about to say something before the husband spoke up and told her to let it be. It was pretty tense for a while, and I decided to stay behind while my cousin got the rest of the family, but thankfully things were pretty chill between us for the rest of the day. But the entitlement vibes were pretty intense coming from these women. She was telling her husband that I told her she wasn't allowed to camp there because of our camp, but I just rolled my eyes at her, and I told her, I'm not telling you what you can or can't do. I don't have the authority to do that. We just set up our stuff first, and this is a public beach, so we have every right to be here just as much as you do. She then told me it wasn't fair because she had a big group coming, and I said, it's Saturday. Everyone coming here is likely to bring a big group too, us included. You aren't the only one, and life isn't fair. She then got pretty livid at me saying that, but you know what? It is what it is. Because this entitled Karen was just that, super entitled and very disrespectful. I can't imagine being so delusional that you would think it's okay to say, oh, I'm just gonna destroy your setup as soon as you leave. So not only were these people planning on destroying your property, but they also said it out loud for everybody to hear. Like seriously, you've got to be either really dumb or you really are just a massive piece of garbage. And it's also so weird that they're fixated on this campsite specifically, because the original poster said it best. There is this massive stretch of beach. They could literally set their campsite up anywhere along that beach and be just fine. But no, they just have to have this spot. This is the only spot they could ever want, and if you don't hand it over, they're going to destroy your property. Like, that is such an insane leap in logic and such a weird sense of entitlement. It honestly should not have gone unpunished. So good for the original poster for standing up for themselves, as well as not taking this garbage sitting down, because this entitled Karen absolutely deserved to be put in her place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Would I be the jerk if I asked my bridesmaid to drop out of my wedding since she's refusing to follow one of the most basic rules I could possibly offer? Here's what happened. My fiance and I are having our wedding in a little under a year, and we are so excited. I mean, this guy is the best man a girl could ever ask for. But if you haven't been through the wedding planning process, it is a nightmare. And the costs, I swear, just keep going up every single day. We dropped close to half of our budget on our dream venue, and we're also skimping on other things, including having a very small wedding. This venue is amazing, but it is very strict on certain things. Smoking is prohibited, which is fine. And in addition, the herb, if you know what I mean, is outlined individually as a big no-no. So there's no edibles, no smoking, no dab pens or anything, which is totally fine by me since my fiance and I don't smoke. Since this is a small wedding, the bridal party is also pretty small, but most of my bridesmaids are stoners. Well, my contract made me worried, and I have reached out to them about asking them not to bring any herb, including edibles. Now, every single girl except for one basically said you don't even need to ask. I wouldn't even think of bringing that to your wedding. This is your day. But the other girl, on the other hand, said that she was going to bring an edible to take after the ceremony. But I told her that it's specifically outlined in my contract that no guest or anyone can have it, or they will literally stop the wedding and everyone has to leave immediately. In addition, addition, if you even have this on you, we will not get refunded for anything, and we will also lose the security deposit of $5,000. Well, she said to me, "It's fine, I know what I'm doing, no one's gonna know, and I was just gonna hide it from you anyways." Now, I still have time to talk to her again, but I'm very frustrated and very anxious because I could literally lose thousands of dollars if she gets caught. Even the website also specifically says that no one can bring that to the venue. My fiance and I are also planning on possibly having a dry wedding as we do not drink. So would I be the jerk if I asked her to step down? I plan on having a big meeting with everyone and outlining the contract again, and if she gets mad, then I'm just gonna tell her to drop out. What should I do? No, you would not be the jerk for kicking her out of your bridal party. Like seriously, what is she thinking? You specifically said, if you do this, we're gonna get in trouble. And the venue itself has said, yeah, you cannot bring that on our premises. So for this bridesmaid to be like, oh, you're not gonna know about it, I was gonna do it anyways. Like that is so inappropriate, it's not even funny. She's literally putting your wedding at risk, all because she wants to take an edible after the wedding. Like seriously, that can't wait a couple of hours. You're not asking a lot out of these people. And the original poster even said that in their state, this substance is illegal. So no, I don't blame you for wanting to kick her out, because if this was my wedding, I definitely would be doing the same thing, because she is jeopardizing you and everybody else's enjoyment of your big day, and you do not deserve to have that kind of added stress in your life. Am I the jerk for telling my sister to please stop talking about her divorce around me, because I feel that her divorce is literally her own fault, and I'm honestly so sick of hearing about it. Here's what happened. My sister and her husband are getting a divorce as he moved out of the family home and filed. My sister didn't see it coming, despite warnings that it could happen because she went behind his back. The story basically goes that she married him knowing that he had absolutely no interest in having his mom, stepdad, or half-siblings in his life. He didn't like his stepdad. He didn't want half-siblings. That was something everyone in our family knew. He was open about having no desire for contact. Well, my sister married him, had kids with him, and then decided he was wrong to deny his family for being steps and halves. So she was making contact and introducing the kids behind his back. She argued with him when he found out and said if nobody else, his half-siblings deserve to be included because they are the most innocent in his family. They didn't ask to be born, and they were not a part of any of the wrongs his mom and stepdad did. He told her he wanted nothing to do with them, and that they were not his real siblings anyways. He also told her that she had gone behind his back and had completely betrayed his trust, and he was not going to stand for it or allow their kids to see that man as grandpa or those kids as uncles and aunts. My sister doesn't want her marriage to end, but has also been pissed at her husband because he's correcting stuff that she told their kids about the stepdad and the half-siblings, and has told the kids that the stepdad and half-siblings are not family. She's mad at him for that because the kids are more resistant now to contact with their parental side and don't call them grandparents, aunts, or uncles or anything like that anymore. But on top of that, she also doesn't want to divorce her husband. It is a mess. It is absolutely crazy. My parents are encouraging her to open up and try to talk about it, but I'm much less sympathetic and much less patient. It's 6 months later since he filed, and I can't be around my extended family without hearing all about this. My sister goes from bad-mouthing her husband to then saying that she hopes he calls off the divorce and that they can work it out and be a family again. My sister also tries to talk to me just one-on-one about all of this. I think my reasoning for being so indifferent to this and being annoyed about hearing it is because she knew how I felt. She knew what his boundary was regarding his family. She had a choice not to marry him. She had a choice not to go behind his back. So to expect that he'd be fine with it when she knew, regardless of what anyone thinks of his actions, still proves that she was not that smart and that the results of her actions should not come as a surprise. Basically, I just don't feel bad for her. I do, however, feel bad for the kids being caught in the middle. When my sister tried to talk about the divorce again 2 or 3 days ago, I asked her to stop talking about it with and around me. She asked how I could be so cold, and I told her, well, it's not like people didn't warn her. In fact, my parents did before they got married, because they didn't love how her husband felt about the half-siblings either. I also explained that I'm tired of hearing about this over and over again. It is honestly getting so old. So am I the jerk for speaking my mind to my sister? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. Your sister clearly made an awful decision, and it's one that was very calculated and very misleading. She literally went behind her husband's back and brought the kids behind his back to meet these estranged family members. Like, if I was in the husband's shoes, I would feel so violated and disrespected. Like, this is a very hard line in the sand. He very clearly did not want anything to do with that side of his family, so for the wife to do that, in my opinion, is a massive deal breaker. And I personally find it very comical that she's so suddenly surprised that he's like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm getting a divorce. Because what she did, in my opinion, is completely unforgivable. And if I was in the husband's shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. My mom's boyfriend and next door neighbor played a horrible prank on her that left my mother as a complete wreck. And now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my mom, who's 59 years old, has been dating her next door neighbor who's 78 years old, and they've been dating for about 2 years. For the sake of the story, we'll call this next door neighbor Mark. Currently, she's out of state visiting her mother, and last week while I was at work, she called me in a complete panic. She said her condo kitchen, which is being remodeled, was flooding the entire building, and I needed to rush over with my spare key to turn off the water. I told her I'd leave immediately, but it would take me about 45 minutes to get there, and I suggested that she call Mark to try and break down the door since he didn't have a spare key. After hanging up, the seriousness of the situation hit me. I worried about the potential damage and the financial consequences for my mom, including lawsuits from other condo owners, and possibly losing her retirement. As I was drafting a message to my boss to explain why I needed to leave, my mom called me again. She said to me, "Don't go. Mark was playing a prank on me." And when I heard that, I was horrified. What kind of person thinks that this is funny? Mark knows my mom has anxiety and has been stressed about the remodel, and I just cannot fathom why he would do this. This morning, my mom provided some more context. She believes Mark did this out of pure revenge because she refused to leave him her key to install a wine rack as a surprise. And the more details that she shared, the more calculated it all seemed. He had sent her a picture showing about a foot of water with a message claiming her unit was flooding the building and that the building manager was trying to access her unit. When she called him for more information, he lied about a fire truck and police car being at the complex. He only admitted it was a joke after she told him that I was on my way. She sent him a text message expressing how cruel his prank was, and he responded by telling her to relax and enjoy her vacation without ever giving an apology. I'm very worried about my mom. If she ends the relationship, I'm afraid Mark might retaliate with another cruel act. Living next door to him means there's no way to avoid him. I need unbiased advice on how my mom should navigate this situation. How do you break up with someone who lives next door? How can I even begin to help her? Am I overreacting by thinking he could be dangerous for this prank? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, I really hope your mom dumps this guy, regardless of if he lives next door or not, because this guy sounds like a bully through and through. He literally pranked your mom all because she didn't give him a key to her house. Like, that alone is creepy enough, but also for him to lie like that and be like, "Oh yeah, you're flooding the entire complex." Like, that is insane in my opinion, and it is so uncalled for. But I will say, if there is one thing that bullies don't like, it is whenever they get exposed for being a bully. So if she wants to break up with him, if I were in her shoes, I would buy like a doorbell camera of some kind, or even set up cameras around the property, just as a safety precaution against anything that Mark could do. And that is such disappointing behavior from somebody that I'm sure your mom thought she could have a future with. Like, this guy's almost 80 years old, and he's acting like a complete toddler. So hopefully your mom dumps this guy, because the way Mark was acting, in my opinion, was completely out of line. My coworker who's worked at this job for over 30 years is making my life a living nightmare, and now it has completely destroyed my sanity, as I am so sick of him treating me like garbage on a daily basis. Here's what happened. I'm a 29-year-old male, and I've been working at this restaurant for about a month now, and almost everybody seems nice. During service, there can be some stressful situations, but at the end of the day, we try to help each other out as much as we can. I say hi to everyone, and I try to be friendly, asking how their day was and how they're doing, and so on. Well, there's one colleague that just never returns the friendly vibe. He is a gray 50-something-year-old man who has been there for about 30 years. Whenever he wants to get something done from a new guy like me, he just shouts and doesn't even say please or thank you. And when things are not done in a certain way, or asked in a certain order, or the wrong words are used when asking for a drink, he'll just straight up ignore me. He will shout at me when I'm looking for a wrong table, when I forget to take out the straws in the glasses, etc. Now, I get there are rules for a reason, and that things have to be done in a certain way, but it's the way that he's trying to boss me around and trying to get things done that is just so inhumane. Also, when I ask him if he had a good weekend, he'll just say, "Yeah," without even looking at me, and then go on about his business. I tried to connect with him and have a good chat with him, trying to see the positives, but I simply can't seem to find them. Everything that I do wrong, he'll be letting me know, even when it's about absolutely nothing. Yesterday, I was finished with work, and we get to order a drink at the bar for free. He works behind the counter and scolded me for not finishing my glass of tap water, even though I definitely did. It sounds small, but there are so many remarks, and I'm just so fed up with it. Every small detail, every remark or glance is now piling giving up on me, and I just can't stand being near this guy anymore. It's like my armor fell off and it's slowly getting to me now. I mean, one of these days, I'll throw a tray of glass in his face and then I'm gonna get fired. And the thing that rubs me the wrong way is the fact that he only does this with new guys and not the girls. He's a 50-something-year-old guy who has gray hair and glasses, and he'll be playing friendly with all the teenage girls and being the smooth server to customers. But if he comes to new guys, he will be an absolute bully. And it is not just me, because other new guys have also come to me and said, be careful with this guy. He's destroying my sanity at work, and they can't really fire him since he's been there for 30-something years. He is an absolute beast of a server, but he's a frustrated little man destroying young coworkers. And I'm honestly having trouble dealing with this. It really grinds my gears that someone would be like that. I mean, what's the point? He can't be enjoying this, right? He is very work and productivity oriented, but he must realize this makes me a worse server than being constructive and an actual human being, right? I honestly feel like I'm at such a loss because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I would just say straight up that there is no point in working at a restaurant like that. That's just my gut instinct, especially when you see someone who's been there for 30 years and they not only haven't moved up from being a server, but also they haven't been fired for the way they're treating their coworkers. So to that end, I think you absolutely have no reason to even bother working at this place, because that guy alone would not make it worth it, because I guarantee you the managers do not care how he acts. But also, on that same note, this guy's trying to play buddy-buddy with the teenage girls because he's a weirdo. He's trying to get close to these female coworkers because in my opinion, he's a creep. And at the same time, he wants to avoid the male coworkers because he doesn't want you to get in the way of him being around these women. Like, this is all just some kind of weird, desperate power play from someone who clearly is an absolute loser. Now, I need to disagree with you on something because in my opinion, it is just not true. You said that they can't really fire him because he's been there for 30-something years, but that is definitely not true. In my opinion, anyone can get fired for anything, and just because someone's worked there for 30 years doesn't mean that they're above the standards set in the workplace. So if I was in your shoes, I would not only be looking for another job because you do not deserve this kind of garbage in the first place, but also I would be complaining to management. I would say to them, guys, this is inappropriate. This guy attacks and treats everybody like garbage, and he's making me and all my other coworkers feel like garbage as well. And based on their reaction to that, I think that might be an indication of whether or not you need to stick around, because if they're dismissive and they're like, oh, he's just been here for 30 years, you just learn to deal with it, then that's like a big red flag that you're like, okay, this place is not for me. But maybe there's a situation where they might do something about it and say, hey, you've got to lay off the new guys. The other aspect of this that I think you really need to consider is that maybe it's time to step up, lace up your bootstraps, and give it right back to this guy. Because if someone's going to talk to me like that at work of all places, you better believe I'm going to give that energy right back to them. I will absolutely be like, no, you are not going to talk to me like that. Because what do you have to lose? You've only been there for a month. The least you can do is set yourself up for success by saying, okay, if we're going to work together, you are definitely not going to talk to me like that. And just because this guy's worked there for what, 30 years, doesn't give him the right to try and talk to you like that. Remember, this guy is your coworker. He is not your boss. He has no power over you. So hopefully this all works out and you don't try to connect with him any further, because this guy sounds like an absolute loser and you deserve way better than what this guy's trying to give you. Am I the jerk for calling out the volunteer church organizer after all the awful things she said about my daughter-in-law? Here's what happened. So my daughter-in-law just lost both of her parents, her mother earlier this year and her dad when she was 15 years old. I love her like she's my own, and I'm so proud of her and how far she's come along. I am very involved in my church, and we were planning an event for my mom's kids. It coincided with my monthly sack lunch ministry for seniors, so in the morning we'd all make lunches and then we'd do other things. We would make friendship bracelets, run around, grill or tie-dye, stuff like that. My daughter-in-law is not religious, but she does like to give back, so when I invited her, she accepted. We got the lunch supplies and she helped with the lunches. She even offered to go deliver them to the organization that we work with, since she has a big car. Well, this is when the church organizer, who we will call Kathy, started having an issue. She thanked my daughter-in-law and said that would be all we needed from her all day and that she can go home afterwards. But I said no. My daughter-in-law is here to spend the day with me and have fun with everybody. Kathy then had the gall to make an ugly face as she said to me, she's not anybody's daughter. So I said to her, that's okay, she's my daughter-in-law. And I said that just in case Kathy didn't know. Kathy then made another ugly face and said that didn't count and that she didn't even belong here, which really ruffled my feathers. Because seriously, everyone should be allowed. If one of the dads wanted to come join us, I would have said yes. Like seriously, who cares? We got into an argument and my daughter-in-law ended up crying. Again, she just lost her mom. She left and told me to have fun, and I rounded on Kathy, and I told her that what she had just done was as unchristian as I'd ever seen, and that if she can't find it in her heart to welcome everybody to our events, then she should not be the volunteer organizer. Kathy told me, well, tough cookies if you don't like that, and then said I need to take it up with the church office. Now, a few other members overheard the conversation, and as I got ready to load up my van for the sack lunches, a few helped me and got to talking about how awful Kathy has been. After I left, they all cornered Kathy and said they would all talk to the church office. Well, needless to say, she isn't the organizer anymore, and she has been in this position for over 2 decades. She then ended up confronting me after church, raising her voice and getting in my face. She told me that I had ruined her life over my daughter-in-law not belonging to the church, and that she hopes I was happy. Now, I admit I did feel bad after that, but I'm not sure if I should. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, I'm gonna say it. People like Kathy in any organization are the reason why people stop going to said organization. And I'm sure all of us have met a Kathy in whatever church, club, or any kind of organization we've been a part of. They try to gatekeep anybody having fun, and they try to act like, oh yeah, you're not really welcome here. You're nobody's daughter. Like, this lady absolutely had to go. So honestly, who cares what Kathy thinks? She is literally an idiot for the way she excluded your daughter-in-law, and if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Jerk and Am I the Genius if you haven't already. And if you want to submit your own stories, everything, and I mean everything I've mentioned today, is linked down below in the description. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the next video.